The story starts with a flashback to 100 years ago, when a terrifying beam of light struck the Earth. This mysterious light began to consume all life on the planet. The once vibrant blue Earth was transformed into a massive, desolate desert. In this new world, humanity's last survivors built fortified cities to cling to existence. On a bus rumbling through the wasteland, a younger Zeon bitterly questions their survival, feeling like nothing more than a bug. Suddenly, a brutish thug deliberately slams him against the window. The man smirks, offering a mock apology with a predatory grin. He sarcastically asks for Zeon's name, his intentions clearly hostile. On the floor, Zeon glares back, stating only his name. The thug and his cronies erupt in laughter, mocking his simple name and parentage. Zeon's eyes harden with silent rage, his patience wearing thin. The thug wraps a heavy arm around him, feigning camaraderie, and reveals a dark secret about their journey. He explains that everyone on this supposed mining bus is either a criminal or a fugitive on the run. He begins to taunt Zeon, trying to guess what crime landed him here. But before he can finish, Zeon explodes, delivering a powerful punch that sends the thug flying. The brute crashes into the seats, stunned by the sudden violence. Zeon stands over him, his expression cold and unyielding. He calmly reveals the nature of his crime: murder. In a flashback to the neon-drenched dystopia of Neo Seoul, Zeon explains his worldview. He didn't kill a person, because in his world, only the strong are considered human. The man he killed was just a rat who tried to steal from him, another piece of trash in the dump. But as the thief lay dying, he uttered a name that would change everything. His brother was Lee Jiryong. The name strikes Zeon with pure terror. He had just made an enemy of an awakener, a being considered a god among the strong. The weight of his mistake crashes down on him. A mere rat had angered a god. The flashback ends, revealing that Zeon boarded this bus to the mines as a last-ditch effort to escape the awakener's wrath. Back in the present, the thug looks up, bloodied, but smiling menacingly. He grabs Zeon by the face, his grip like iron. In a shocking twist, Zeon is thrown across the bus. He crashes to the floor, screaming in agony. The thug cracks his knuckles, his expression turning grim. He reveals he's also running from an awakener, and Zeon has crossed a line by bringing that trouble here. An explosive orange aura flares around the thug, his eyes glowing red. He too is an awakener. Zeon's hope plummets. He ran from one god only to find another. Just as the awakener and his gang move in for the kill, the entire bus is violently shaken. The thugs are thrown off balance, one yelling at the driver to watch the road, but the driver is slumped over his wheel, unresponsive. The passenger checks on him, only to find the driver muttering in sheer terror. His face is a mask of horror and despair. The driver babbles that they weren't going to the mines. With tears streaming down his face, he screams their true fate. They are being consumed by a colossal sandworm, the bus spiraling into its massive, tooth-filled maw. The scene inside the bus descends into chaos as they are devoured. Zeon is once again helpless, caught in a cycle of being prey for the strong. Whether in the city hunted by awakeners or eaten by monsters, his life was one of constant suffering. He accepts his fate, screaming as he's pulled under the sand. In this world, the weak are destined to be devoured, and his death is just another predictable tragedy. He reaches a desperate hand towards the closing maw of the beast. He briefly imagines a different life, one where he had the power to fight back. As he's pulled into the darkness of the sandworm's belly, his body begins to sink. His hand is the last part of him to be swallowed by the suffocating sand. But in the crushing darkness, something awakens. His eyes snap open, glowing with an otherworldly light. He screams as an unbearable pain and a surge of new energy course through his body. The transformation is agonizing, tearing him apart and rebuilding him. An X-ray view shows a new power flowing through his very nervous system. In his mind's eye, he sees visions of a forgotten world, giant statues lying broken in the sand. He sees a shattered Earth, desolate and surrounded by asteroids. The ruins of ancient civilizations, like a fallen Eiffel Tower, are buried under endless dunes. He sees monuments of a lost era, half submerged in sand. A strange celestial body is reflected in his eye, a source of immense power. The ruins of a bridge crumble, waterfalls of sand pouring into the abyss. He clenches his eyes shut, processing the flood of information and power. This power originates from the very sand that was meant to be his tomb. He sees a bright, burning star at the center of a vortex in his vision. A name for his newfound ability echoes in his mind: Sandblaster. With a roar, he unleashes this power, the sand around him erupting with explosive force. The blast tears through the sandworm from the inside, a geyser of sand and gore erupting from its head. Zeon emerges from the carnage, covered in the beast's remains. He stands tall, a solitary figure against the backdrop of the monster. With glowing eyes and an unshakable will, he vows that he will survive, no matter what this damned world throws at him. Golden energy crackles across Zeon's skin as he feels an unfamiliar power pulsing through his entire being. He clenches his fist, a look of dawning realization on his face. This incredible surge, this raw power, it was an awakening. The colossal sandworm, grievously wounded from Zeon's internal blast, writhes in agony on the desert floor. With a final, desperate lunge, the enraged beast charges towards the newly awakened boy. But Zeon stands his ground, a calm and dangerous look in his eyes. He steels himself, ready to test his new power against the monster, challenging it to bring it on. In a sudden flash, however, another man appears. With a flick of his wrist, Zeon is sent flying backward through the air. He crashes hard into the dunes, spitting out sand and gasping for breath, completely overwhelmed. Pushing himself to his knees, he looks up in a panic, wondering who this man is, and how he got so close, so fast. His face is a mask of pure, unadulterated shock, unable to comprehend the power he just faced. The scene shatters again, replaced by a massive splash of dark, viscous blood exploding onto the sand. Standing atop the now-dead sandworm is the man, his massive greatsword buried deep in the beast's head. He coolly remarks on the creature's impressive height. With a grunt, he begins to pull his massive blade free, casually suggesting they get back down to ground level. The sound of the massive blade being wrenched from the monster's carcass echoes across the dunes. Watching from a short distance, Zeon is utterly dumbfounded, his expression one of pure, unadulterated awe. The man struggles for a moment, complaining that his sword is stuck. Zeon realizes he's witnessing the overwhelming power of a true high-level awakener. Suddenly, a cheerful, blue-haired girl latches onto Zeon's arm, proudly introducing the swordsman as their captain, Jang Yongbyom. She beams with pride, gushing about how amazing her captain is, while Zeon is too stunned by her sudden appearance to react. The girl, Giselle, excitedly chatters on, wondering if this was a new record for the captain. Zeon, finally snapping out of it, is shocked by her presence and her hidden strength. As he looks down, he sees ice rapidly forming on his arm where she's holding him, the chilling power making him realize she's far from ordinary. The captain, Jang Yongbyom, approaches them, dismissing his own feat by saying sandworms aren't tough opponents. He then calls out Giselle's name with a hint of annoyance. Jang Yongbyom watches his subordinate's antics with a stern and weary expression. He lets out an exasperated sigh, clearly having to deal with Giselle's chaotic energy on a regular basis. Giselle, completely ignoring her captain's mood, offers a cheeky salute before turning her attention back to Zeon. In a flash, she tackles Zeon, sending him tumbling onto the soft sand. She playfully pins him down, a wide, excited grin on her face as she announces her intention to find out his grade and ability. With giddy excitement, she begins to unwrap the bandages on his arm, expecting to find the glowing insignia of an awakener. But her gleeful expression immediately melts into one of pure confusion. There's nothing there. Zeon, lying on the ground, screams in agony as his arm is nearly twisted from its socket by the force. She turns to her captain, declaring that the boy isn't an awakener after all. The captain himself is just as confused. He knows he's awakened, but how could he not have an insignia? Just then, a man with green hair leans out of a military truck, yelling for them to stop dawdling and get a move on before sunset. Giselle asks her captain what to do with Zeon, calling him a poor guy. Captain Jang Yongbyom looks down at Zeon with a thoughtful, calculating gaze. Zeon stares back, his heart pounding. Once again, his life is in the hands of the strong. After a moment's consideration, the captain decides to take him along, figuring he was heading for the mine anyway. Giselle lets out a cheerful, "Yes, sir!" The heavily armored truck speeds across the vast orange-tinted desert as the sun begins to dip below the horizon. Inside, the team is crammed together. The green-haired man continues to panic, screaming at the driver about the approaching night. In the back, Zeon lies tied up among the cargo crates, silently contemplating his strange new reality. As he lies there, the sand on the truck bed begins to stir, swirling in intricate patterns around him, answering his silent call. A small spout of sand rises into the air, a subtle and controlled manifestation of his newfound power. He sits up, his hands still bound, and confirms to himself that he has indeed awakened an ability, one that lets him command the very sand beneath him. But he remains deeply troubled by one question: why couldn't they see his rank insignia? He thinks back to the mark that appeared on his arm. It wasn't the usual glowing color, but a muted, earthy tone, the same color as the sand. He knows that an awakener's insignia color corresponds to their ability type. Magic types, like the bubbly and dangerous Giselle, are known to have blue insignias, and martial types, like the brute captain, are typically marked by a fierce red glow. He's heard rumors of other, rarer types, but an ability to manipulate sand was completely unheard of. As far as he knew, a power like his had never been documented before, making him a total anomaly. He recalls that his insignia showed F rank, the absolute lowest grade possible for an awakener, but a chilling, confident grin spreads across his face. He can feel it in his very core. This power has boundless potential, as vast and untamable as the desert itself. For now, he'll play the part of the weak, helpless boy. He'll bide his time, hiding his power and enduring until he achieves perfect control. He closes his eyes, envisioning a world made of sand in his hands. He vows that this desert, and eventually the entire world, will become his personal stage. Finally, the truck rolls to a stop before a massive, fortified complex carved into a jagged canyon, the Mana Crystal Mine. Looking out, Zeon sees the heavily guarded entrance, a stark and imposing sight against the blood-red sky. So this was his destination. A red-haired guard roughly yanks him out of the truck, pointing out that he's still tied up. The guard shoves him forward, warning him to keep quiet. As Zeon is led away, the captain and Giselle watch from behind. Giselle wonders aloud if the captain finds it strange that a seemingly ordinary boy survived a sandworm attack all on his own. The captain initially dismisses her concerns, telling her not to worry and that it was probably just a coincidence. But a moment later, his expression hardens. No, he concludes, it couldn't have been a coincidence. He vividly remembers the perfectly circular, cauterized hole blown straight through the monster's skull. He silently wonders what could have possibly made such a wound. As they enter the mine, the captain mutters that he should have at least asked for the kid's name. He has a strong feeling their paths will cross again. Arriving at the mana crystal mine, Zeon is shocked to find not a desolate work camp, but a sprawling, makeshift city teeming with life, built deep within the canyon. It's a chaotic, lawless-looking settlement, where weary miners and opportunistic vultures coexist under the dim, artificial lights. As Zeon takes in the surprising sight, the guard holding him captive breaks his ties, telling him to shut his mouth and wait quietly for the supervisor. Zeon defiantly asks if the guard is just going to leave him here. The guard sneers, asking if he'd prefer a bullet in the head instead. With a final look of contempt, the guard dismisses him, saying it's not like a weakling like him could do anything anyway. He then walks off, leaving Zeon to fend for himself. Muttering curses at the guard, Zeon decides to make the best of his situation. He's free for now, and his first priority is to find something to eat. His stomach leads him to a small stall grilling meat skewers, run by a weathered-looking old man. His eyes are suddenly drawn to a nearby wall. A propaganda poster hangs there. It depicts triumphant workers holding a mana crystal, proclaiming, "With our labor, let's brightly illuminate Neo's soul." As Zeon ponders the poster, the old man wordlessly hands him a drink. The vendor comments that the poster, in its own twisted way, is completely accurate. His gnarled, scarred hands are a testament to a long, hard life in this place. He confirms that Neo's soul's energy source is indeed the magic stones, or mana crystals, mined from this very place. But then, he leans in, asking Zeon if he knows what the real energy source is. It's not the crystals, he says. He points a crooked finger at Zeon. The true fuel for the city, he reveals, is rats, disposable, replaceable people just like him. The old man explains that these rats are brought in, do as they're told, and when their numbers run low, more are brought in to fill the headcount. An endless, brutal cycle. He makes a cruel jab at Zeon's youth, remarking that most people his age who come here are probably already dead. He then casually asks how it felt being inside the sandworm. Zeon is taken aback that the rumor has already spread. The old man warns him that he's a fool for coming here, that this place is a tomb, not a safe haven. But Zeon bites back, defiantly stating that he didn't come here to hide. He came here to make money. The old man lets out a dry, rasping laugh, calling his ambition bullshit. With a sinister grin, he tells Zeon he'll show him something interesting. He gestures towards a dingy storage area filled with shelves of dusty, forgotten boxes and junk. Zeon looks over, unimpressed, and asks what's so interesting about a pile of trash. He wonders if the old man has gone senile. The vendor's smile widens. Those aren't just things, he explains. They are the last remnants of the fools who came here with dreams, collected one by one over the years. With a chilling finality, he declares, it's also Zeon's future. Man tells that everyone who comes here first avoid going into the mine, trying to escape the endless dark of the mine. Fearful of death in the tunnels, people sell everything they own, desperately trying to hold out for as long as possible. They even sell themselves, doing anything to delay the inevitable descent into the pit. But it's all for nothing. All they're doing is delaying their fate, and whatever little they have slowly slips away like sand through their fingers. In the end, their struggles are meaningless. They fall, swallowed by the darkness, their hope extinguished. The old man's voice echoes, stating that while a person leaves their name behind, trash only leaves behind more trash, even in death. He looks Zeon dead in the eye, saying he's looking forward to seeing what kind of trash he'll leave behind. Zeon grits his teeth, his anger rising. He dismisses the old man's morbid ramblings and curtly asks how much the skewer costs. The old man grins. The price is 10 sol. Zeon explodes, yelling that he must be crazy. 10 sol for a single skewer is pure robbery. He quickly calms himself, putting on a confident smirk. He tells the old man he doesn't have that kind of money, accusing him of trying to scam him just because he's a new face. But his defiant tone attracts the wrong kind of attention. From the shadows of the surrounding stalls, other vendors emerge, their faces grim. They are armed with meat cleavers and long knives, slowly closing in on Zeon, their intentions clear. Zeon begins to sweat, his bravado fading as he realizes the gravity of his mistake. He stammers that there's no way he's paying the ridiculous price. Zeon's face pales as the old man poses a terrifying question. Didn't he think it was strange that a weak old man could run a business so freely in a lawless place like this? The terrifying answer becomes clear as the shadows behind the old man fill with dozens of glowing red eyes and the glint of sharpened blades. The old man's face contorts into a devilish grin. With his crew of thugs surrounding their new victim, he smugly asks Zeon what he's going to do now. Trapped and outmatched, Zeon's demeanor shatters. He slams his fist on the table in a desperate, panicked gesture. He pleads with the old man, his voice cracking as he insists he doesn't have any money, and begs them to just talk it out. The old man leans in close, a predatory smile on his face. He says not to worry, because if Zeon doesn't have money, they can always make a trade with something else. His eyes lock onto the glowing mana crystal peeking from Zeon's pocket. He says that will do nicely. Zeon is horrified. Not only does the old man know about the sandworm, but he also knows about the crystal he risked his life for. The vendor demands the crystal, extending his hand with a greedy look. He mockingly promises to give Zeon a fair appraisal. As a hulking butcher grabs him from behind, Zeon desperately tries to reason with him, protesting that he went through hell to protect that crystal. The butcher, enraged, yells at the old man to stop wasting time and just let him bury the kid. But as he rears back his fist, his face is suddenly showered in blood. Zeon unleashes his power. With a cry of "Sandblaster," a high-pressure jet of sand erupts from his hand, blowing the thug's head clean off his shoulders. The surrounding thugs are frozen in shock as his comrade's severed hand lands in their arms. Before they can react, Zeon unleashes a devastating wave of sand. The entire stall is obliterated in an instant, shredding the old man and his thugs to pieces. Amidst the gory aftermath, Zeon stands firm, his face a mask of shadow and his eyes glowing with raw, untamed power. Suddenly, a hand grabs his head, shaking him violently. "Hey, hey!" a familiar voice shouts. Zeon's eyes snap open, the blood and carnage vanishing. The butcher asks if Zeon is all right, if he was having a nightmare. The bloody illusion vanishes, and Zeon is back in the real world. With a thud, he places the mana crystal on the counter, telling the old man to take the very thing he was so desperate for. The vendor holds the glimmering blue stone, his greedy eyes fixed on his prize. He inspects it carefully, noting its impressive size and quality. But his appraisal is an insult, a mere 100 soul. Zeon erupts, slamming his fist on the table and yelling that a crystal this pure should be worth at least 300. The old man just sneers, telling him everything is precious in this hole, and that perhaps he should have just ended up as sandworm food. Zeon's face twists into a feral snarl. Despite his rage, Zeon is no match for the thugs. He slammed face first onto the grimy table. For a moment, he considers unleashing his power, knowing he could easily wipe the floor with these vultures, but he holds back. Not yet. Lifting his head, a drop of blood trickling from his lip, Zeon flashes a chilling grin. He agrees to the price, but tells the old man to make sure he gets plenty of change. The vendor chuckles, warning him to keep his money safe from the robbers and pickpockets lurking about. Zeon deadpans that he's looking at one right now. Amused, the old man decides to be generous. He points towards his pile of junk in the back. As change, he tells Zeon to pick just one item from the collection of forgotten trash. Zeon begins to rummage through the pile, grumbling that it's nothing but a complete dump. Watching him, the old man smirks. He's amused by the kid's stubborn refusal to ever take a loss. Zeon goofs around, trying on a ridiculous mustache and glasses combo and brandishing a toy gun. The old man notes his petty vitality, a spark he hasn't seen in this tomb for a very long time. But then, amongst the trash, something genuinely catches his eye. The old man explains that the odd-looking glasses were simply left behind by a caravan a while ago. Concluding he won't find anything better, Zeon finally makes his choice, picking up a strange, ornate hourglass. The old man calls his choice useless and gives him a hard shove on the back, telling him to get lost. As he walks away, Zeon turns back and asks for the old man's name. The vendor cups his hands and shouts it across the alley. "Klexi!" With a sly grin, Zeon tells Klexi he hopes they never see each other again. Klexi just laughs, muttering, "We'll see about that," as they part ways. Back in the desolate miner's quarters, Zeon examines his new acquisition. He watches the sand fall, calculating it will take about 10 minutes to empty completely. He settles onto the cold metal floor of his new home. Closing his eyes, he begins a deep breathing exercise, centering his mind and focusing his energy. He inhales and he exhales, gathering his power. His eyes snap open, now glowing with a golden light. He grips the hourglass tightly. He whispers the command to move. For a second, his reflection wavers in the glass, but nothing happens. Zeon clicks his tongue in frustration. So it wasn't an item related to his awakening. He racks his brain. He's sure he's never seen it before. But as he looked through the junk, he felt a strange sense of déjà vu, as if the hourglass was waiting for him. It felt both familiar and new, a paradox he couldn't understand. Suddenly, his door is kicked off its hinges with a deafening crash. A mountain of a man named Bak Manhwa storms in, roaring about why the new piece of trash isn't at the mines yet. Zeon calmly replies that his name isn't trash, it's Zeon, and no one gave him directions. His backtalk earns him a brutal punch that sends him flying. The supervisor tells him to shut his mouth. Bak Manhwa unleashes a vicious beating, punching and kicking the boy mercilessly on the floor. He screams at Zeon for daring to talk back to him, questioning if he looks like a pushover. He rages that an unawakened nobody like him needs to learn to just take his beating and stay quiet. Finally satisfied, Bak Manhwa stops, ordering the battered Zeon to hurry up and follow him. Zeon struggles to his feet, his body aching and covered in bruises, but his eyes burn with cold fury. He whispers the supervisor's name, Bak Manhwa, and makes a silent vow. "I'll make sure to kill you." He's dragged to the dark, gaping maw of the Sector 3 mine entrance. Inside, Bak Man-ho shoves him at another miner, ordering them to equip the new recruit. As they hastily put a vest on him, the worker explains that the cost of everything will be deducted from his wages. Zeon cuts to the chase, asking what the daily wage is. The worker freezes, terrified to answer, but Bak Man-ho answers for him by smashing the new helmet with a pickaxe. He screams that the cost of the broken helmet will be deducted too, before calling Zeon a moron. Still fuming, he orders the others to send Zeon to the infamous Tunnel 972. The miners' faces drain of color. One of them protests that they haven't explored that tunnel yet. It's too dangerous. Bak Man-ho threatens to send them instead, and their courage evaporates. They grab Zeon, promising to take him. As they drag Zeon into the darkness, Bak Man-ho issues one final threat: find a mana crystal, or don't come back alive. As they descend into the cavernous mine, Zeon's unwilling guide tells him he picked a terrible day to start. The supervisor, Bak Man-ho, had just lost big at the gambling den. Zeon is surprised to hear about gambling, but the miner confirms it's just like Neo Soul down here, complete with booze, drugs, and any other vice you could want. With a smirk, Zeon remarks that business must be good with idiots, like Bak Man-ho fueling the economy. His companion laughs, calling him bold. Zeon sighs about having to do manual labor with his baby skin, but the other miner tells Zeon not to worry about getting hurt. After all, no one has ever been injured in Tunnel 972. The lift grinds to a halt, and they've arrived. This is the dreaded Tunnel 972. Zeon, still naive to the situation, asks if he just needs to grab some mana crystals and head back. The miner flatly tells him he won't be coming back. He explains that over a dozen people have disappeared in this tunnel, 4 of whom he knew personally. No one knows why or how. With a cold heart, the miner apologizes, and then thanks Zeon for taking his place, for going into the one place no one else would ever enter. The gate slams shut, and the lift begins its ascent. It's only then that Zeon realizes the horrifying truth. He's been left to die. He screams for the man to come back. His despair quickly turns to white-hot rage. He screams, cursing Bak Man-ho for sending him here to die just because of a bad day at the tables. In his frustration, he swings the pickaxe wildly, but it slips from his grasp and flies right back at his face, knocking him flat. The clumsy blow sends his only tool skittering away into the darkness. Dazed, Zeon scrambles to find it. Now unarmed and alone, Zeon takes in the massive, eerie cavern. The sheer scale of the tunnel is unsettling, but as his panic subsides, he senses something else. The air is thick, with an incredible concentration of mana, far too dense for a normal person to even perceive. He pushes deeper into the tunnel, the mana becoming so oppressive he starts to feel sick. He realizes a normal human would have already succumbed to mana overload. His headlamp then catches a glint in the distance. He's found something. It's his pickaxe. The wooden handle is snapped, but it's better than being completely defenseless. Relieved, he takes a step to retrieve it, but the ground beneath him suddenly groans and cracks. Before he can react, the floor gives way to a swirling red vortex of raw energy. His eyes widen in terror as the strange force begins to pull him in. He can only scream in panic as he's dragged into the unknown abyss, realizing too late that he's been caught in a portal. His helmet and broken pickaxe are tossed aside as the portal swallows him whole. The vortex vanishes as quickly as it appeared, leaving the broken pickaxe as the only evidence that anyone was ever there. Zeon's life flashes before his eyes. A lonely child, cast out by his parents, scorned by his neighbors, wishing for any life but this one. He remembers being beaten bloody for stealing a piece of meat, his only desire to not go hungry for one day. He remembers the desperate flights from the law, running for his life after a heist, all for the chance to dream of something more, but his pursuers always caught up. He recalls the despair of being cornered, told his pathetic life was finally over. He remembers being hunted like an animal, with orders to bring him back dead or alive, but preferably alive and dismembered. Through all the pain and terror, his wish was simple: to live a normal life, free from fear. He smacks onto hard, dusty ground, the brutal landing knocking him unconscious. He awakens with a pounding headache, slowly pushing himself up from the ground, utterly disoriented. The air is hot and muggy, and as he touches the ground, he realizes it's covered in a fine layer of what looks like ash. He struggles to his feet, sweat pouring down his face, a dreadful realization starting to dawn on him. Looking up, in terror, the pieces click into place. If he fell through a portal, that must mean he's inside a dungeon. The reveal is horrifying, a vast, fiery hellscape stretching as far as the eye can see. Just then a rock comes bouncing near him. He picks it up, only to find it scorching hot, sizzling on contact. A jolt of searing pain shoots through him, forcing him back onto his feet. He throws the rock, cursing at it. This is no dream. He's in a dungeon, the kind of place even the high-tech forces of Neo Soul have to meticulously prepare for. He realizes the fine dust covering everything is volcanic ash, like sand scorched by fire. He knows he needs to move fast before his lungs are completely fried by the toxic air. Tearing off a strip of cloth for a makeshift mask, he formulates a desperate plan. If this hellscape has an entrance, it must have an exit, and the most likely spot is that massive, lava-spewing mountain peak. Standing around will only lead to a slow, agonizing death from the heat and ash. With no magic beasts in sight, he decides now is the perfect time to make a run for it. Staling his resolve, he declares that he is Zeon, the man who never knows when to quit, and takes the shortest route. But his mad dash is cut short as the parched ground beneath him cracks and shatters. He starts plummeting toward the chasm of molten rock. But at the last moment his hand reaches the edge. He pushes himself up, screaming that a little thing like lava isn't enough to scare him. The close call leaves him gasping for air. A surge of pure, unadulterated rage courses through him. He screams a promise to the heavens. The moment he gets out, he's going to find and kill Manhwa. But he quickly realizes his anger is only making the oppressive heat worse, so he forces himself to cool down. With his anger suppressed, a cold resolve takes its place. He swears he will survive this. He will claw his way out, no matter what it takes. It's an impossible climb, but he tells himself he just needs to make a few more jumps, and he'll be there. He forces his mind to go blank. Don't think, just move. His life won't end here. He pushes off, determined to never ever stop fighting. But just as he leaps, the ground doesn't just crack, it erupts. A colossal beast, a creature of scale and magma, bursts from the lava, its gaping maw ready to devour him whole. Before he can even process his impending doom, the beast's mouth is violently closed. The massive creature sinks back into the lava. All that's left are bubbles on the surface of the molten rock. But this wasn't the end of our hero. We see a trail of sand rising from the beast head. Just at the last moment, our hero had controlled the ash to push himself up from falling into the lava. He notices something strange. The ash is melting away. He'd had a feeling, but now it's undeniable. For some reason, he can control volcanic ash. This strange new power may have saved his life, but it doesn't change the fact that the environment itself is killing him. The heat is just too much. His lungs feel like they've been roasted. He can't breathe. His mind is going blank from the lack of oxygen and overwhelming heat. As consciousness fades, he can only wonder if this is truly how he's going to die. He scoffs at the irony. It hasn't even been a minute since he swore to survive. With his last ounce of strength, he laments that dying like this is just too unfair. He's never even had a girlfriend. He can't die a virgin. That's the greatest mortal sin. But just as he's about to accept his fate, a new fire ignites within him. He apologizes to someone called Old Man Yama, saying he'll have to settle for a crocodile bag instead of him. Tendrils of black ash shoot from his hands as he prepares for one last stand. But before he can act, a mysterious voice echoes through the cavern, noting that he possesses quite an amusing ability. Zeon is stunned. He looks around wondering if it's Old Man Yama. The voice laughs, finding his ability to manipulate sand truly amusing. Zeon looks up to see the source of the voice. An old man is literally falling out of the sky. Just as Zeon wonders about the identity of the mysterious voice, its owner makes a dramatic entrance. The old man comes hurtling down from the sky with a maniacal grin, looking more like a falling god than a human. Zeon can only stare in absolute shock, his mind unable to process what he's seeing. With a cataclysmic boom, the man lands, shattering the ground and sending a massive shockwave erupting outwards. The sheer force of the impact is devastating, tearing through the already fractured landscape. It slams into Zeon, throwing him through the air like a rag doll. He crashes hard into a rock wall, his body screaming in protest. The world rings as he clutches his head, the shockwave so powerful he thinks his eardrums have ruptured. He can't hear a thing. Staggering to his feet, his first thought is of the lava monster. He looks down and sees its massive, lifeless corpse. Then his eyes drift to the old man, who stands casually amidst the destruction. Zeon is floored. He realizes this geezer isn't just some strong awakener. The power radiating from him is on a completely different plane of existence. This man is truly a monster in human skin, an entity beyond comprehension. The mysterious warrior takes a single heavy step forward, the ground cracking with each steps. He looks down at the terrified Zeon and calmly asks him for his name. With a condescending smile, he gives Zeon a 3-second ultimatum to answer. The pressure mounts as he begins the countdown, his gaze never leaving Zeon. 3, 2, 1. Before he can even blink, time is up. The old man is standing right in front of him. He smirks, noting that since Zeon won't speak, he can just die. Panic finally breaks through Zeon's shock. He screams, begging the man to wait and spare his life. The old geezer chuckles, glad to see Zeon isn't a mute after all, before demanding his name once more. With what little voice he can muster, Zeon screams that his name is Zeon. The old man's only response is to call out, "What a dumbass names." Zeon retorts, asking what's the geezer's name to be making fun of his. The old man unleashes another terrifying attack nearby. He then introduces himself as Deodin. Zeon, still reeling, clutches his head in pain and confusion, demanding to know what's going on. He can't understand why this man would save him, only to threaten him moments later. But Deodin simply cuts him off, calling him a dumbass again. He explains that Zeon was caught in something called a snare. It's a rare phenomenon that happens when a dungeon is overloaded with mana. To vent the pressure, it creates a new entrance, and at the same time it reels in any nearby living creatures as a defense mechanism. He tells Zeon that a normal person would never encounter one in their lifetime, calling him an unlucky brat. The reminder of his foul luck sends Zeon's mind back to the one who caused all this, Manhwa. Zeon has had enough. He screams at the old man to stop calling him a dumbass. Daeodon just sighs and says he'll show the boy exactly why he's a dumbass. He grabs Zeon's head, forcing him to look straight ahead, and tells him to gather mana into his eyes. He orders him to increase the purity of the mana, to feel it, and to see with it instead of his normal eyes. As Zeon focuses, the world begins to warp and shift through his mana-infused vision. Suddenly he sees it, a grotesque, cloaked monster, lurking right in front of him where he previously saw nothing. Daeodon smirks, confirming that Zeon can finally see the invisible beast. He explains it's a monster with cloaking abilities that preys on the oblivious. Prey just like Zeon. A cold dread washes over our hero. This thing was right under his nose, and he felt nothing. No presence, no killing intent, no sense of danger whatsoever. He realizes that if it weren't for Daeodon's intervention, he would have been eaten without even knowing what happened. This old man has now saved his life twice in the span of a few minutes. He looks at Daeodon, completely humbled by the man's overwhelming power. His curiosity overriding his fear, he finally asks the man who he truly is. Daeodon's response is complete rage bait, calling him a complete dumbass and asking if he already forgot his name. He is Daeodon, you brat! Zeon's patience finally snaps. He screams at the old man, demanding to know who he is to wield such power, and where in the hell they've ended up. Daeodon calmly replies that they are inside a dungeon which has now become his personal hunting ground. With a wild, almost unhinged grin, he tells Zeon that as for his identity, the boy will have to use his own eyes to figure it out. Daeodon utters a single word, Creon, awakening his sword. In an instant, the very ground tears open, unleashing an overwhelming torrent of dark, malevolent energy that fills the cavern. The sudden eruption of power is too much for Zeon, who clutches his head in agony. He looks up in terror, completely baffled by what the old geezer is doing now. From the ground, a swarm of fiery bird-like monsters comes to the surface, screeching as they fill the air. Zeon can only scream in horror at the sudden onslaught. He finds himself surrounded, a lone human in a vortex of flaming death as Daeodon shouts at him. The old warrior roars, telling Zeon that if he's worth anything, he'll survive on his own. With that, the crazy old geezer is gone, leaving Zeon to fend for himself as the fiery beasts descend upon him. He grits his teeth, cursing the creatures as they swarm him from all sides, their sheer numbers overwhelming. He desperately dodges and weaves, shocked by their incredible speed. The monsters are too fast to track, darting around like streaks of red light that he can't even run from. He's being overwhelmed, but in his panic, he notices something odd. They're only attacking his left side. He tries to fight back, but the sheer number of them is too much to handle. He's torn apart, his body being ripped and burned from a dozen different directions at once. He hits the ground, bleeding and battered. He realizes with dawning horror that neither his sand nor his own eyes can keep up with their movements. In a flash of white-hot pain, he knows he's done for. If he stays like this, he's going to die. He remembers that the old man has already saved him twice. He can't just die here like a useless idiot. Bleeding and desperate, he knows he has to find a way to see enemies that his eyes can't follow. His mind races, frantically searching for a solution amidst the chaotic assault. Just as despair sets in, he remembers Daeodon's voice, calling him an idiot and promising to show him exactly why. Daeodon has told him to stop relying on his worthless eyes. He must gather mana, increase its purity, and focus. As Zeon concentrates, his eyes begin to burn with golden light. He's told to feel the mana, to see with it. The world shifts. The fiery birds are no longer just a blur. He feels the mana of the monsters around him. As he focuses, Zeon's perception expands beyond his physical sight, his eyes now glowing with power. He no longer sees the birds, but their very essence, their mana cores glowing like embers in the dark. The old man's final instruction echoes in his mind. See with mana. And when the enemy's mana gets close, counterattack from the shortest distance. A beast lunges, and for the first time, Zeon sees its attack before it happens, striking back with perfect timing. Just as Zeon gets the hang of it, an even greater threat emerges from the flames. A colossal crocodile. Zeon is stunned, wondering if the old geezer planned all this. But before the new monster can attack Zeon, Daeodon intercepts it, laughing manically. He exclaims that this is fun, that it's been a while since he's been this fired up. The old warrior becomes a blur of motion, his massive blade cleaving through the crocodile's skin with devastating force. Roaring with pure battle ecstasy, he demands more, a crazed look in his eyes as he relishes the thrill of the fight. His tears the crocodile in half, screaming for them to keep coming. Still high on battle lust, Daeodon doesn't even pause, bringing his massive blade down on the giant monster and tearing through its armored hide with a single brutal swing. He utterly demolishes the beast in a flurry of strikes, but the brief fight only leaves him wanting more. With a disappointed sigh, he complains that monsters just aren't what they used to be, lamenting the lack of a real challenge. Zeon watches the carnage unfold, completely dumbfounded. The old man's power is so overwhelming, he almost feels bad for the monsters. The battlefield falls silent, the ground littered with the remains of the creatures Daeodon slaughtered. It's so absurd, Zeon doesn't even know what to say. With a nervous laugh, he hopes the fight is finally over, that there aren't any more monsters left to deal with. But a sudden tremor and a sinking feeling in his gut tell him he's dead wrong. The ground suddenly erupts in a violent explosion of fire and magma, signaling the arrival of a far greater threat. Zeon is thrown back by the sheer force of the blast, barely able to stay conscious. He coughs up blood, struggling to push himself up from the fractured ground. Daoden appears beside him, completely unfazed. As Zeon asks what just happened, his master calmly explains, "That was the roar of the dungeon boss, the source of this entire area's power. From the molten abyss, a new beast emerges, wreathed in an ominous blue aura." Daoden confirms that this monster is the very reason he came here. Zeon can only stare in horror, his mind struggling to process the scale of the new enemy. With a wild, toothy grin, Daoden welcomes the dungeon's true ruler. "You've finally made your appearance, the Crimson Drake." The colossal beast towers over them, its very presence warping the air. Zeon asks if it's a dragon. Daoden dismisses the idea. It's just a drake, but a powerful one, at least B rank. As the beast gathers its power, a swirling blue aura surrounds it. Zeon's eyes widen as he recognizes the phenomenon. If it's truly B rank, then that glowing energy must be a force field. Daoden seems surprised the boy knows about such things. Zeon explains he's only heard rumors that high-rank monsters possess unique traits, much like awakeners. A red force field would indicate a martial type, but this one's is blue. As the drake lets out a roar, a colossal shard of ice materializes in the air above, proving Zeon's horrifying realization. It's a magic type, and one that can summon an attack of this magnitude is way too overpowered for them to handle. But before the ice can fall, Daoden becomes a crimson blur, shattering the mountain of ice with a single, perfectly executed cross-slash. Zeon is frozen in place, his mind unable to comprehend the scene before him. His common sense, his experience, all of it, is utterly meaningless in the face of the old geezer's power. Undeterred, the Crimson Drake opens its maw and unleashes a devastating beam of pure energy, but Daoden meets it head-on, his sword glowing with power. With a grunt, he deflects the massive attack, sending it careening into the cavern wall. The drake can only stare in disbelief, its ultimate attack swatted away like a fly. Daoden doesn't give it a moment to recover, closing the distance in an instant as he prepares to deliver a finishing blow. The drake fires another blast. A truly terrifying grin spreads across his face as he relishes the fight. He effortlessly redirects the attack, his eyes glowing with sadistic glee. His wild laughter echoes through the cavern as he taunts the beast. "Does it hurt, Drake? Fret not. I shall personally end it for you, because today is the day of your funeral." Zeon realizes with dawning horror that if the old man keeps this up, it'll be his funeral too. The two titans clash, their battle shaking the very foundations of the dungeon. Zeon turns and runs for his life, trying to escape the collateral damage, but even from a distance, the shockwaves are too much to handle, tossing him around like a rag doll. He desperately tries to brace himself, his body screaming in protest. He digs his feet into the cracking earth, struggling to stay upright against the overwhelming force. He can only watch as the battle rages, the sheer power on display completely breaking his spirit. Daoden's insane laughter rings out once more, finding the life or death struggle endlessly amusing. How fun! Doesn't it feel like we're at an amusement park? He taunts the mighty Crimson Drake, his voice filled with pure, unadulterated joy. As the two clash one final devastating time, a cataclysmic wave of energy erupts from the point of impact, blasting everything and everyone away. Zeon curses as he's sent flying, tumbling helplessly onto the ground. He falls off cliff, his body battered and broken, heading straight into the lava pool, blood dripping from his face. His eyes are wide with terror. Looking up from the bottom, he can only watch as the godlike battle continues to rage far above him. With a bloodthirsty grin, Daoden mocks the beast's pitiful efforts, demanding to know if this is all it has. He laughs, finding it pathetic that a dungeon boss would be so easily beaten down. But the Crimson Drake isn't finished yet, gathering the last of its power for one final desperate attack. Daoden's grin widens. This is more like it. The beast unleashes a concentrated torrent of pure magic, but the old man meets it with a swirling vortex of his own, the two attacks colliding with world-shattering force. As the drake's attack falters, it seems to be fading away, but it's not over yet. With a defiant roar, it prepares another blast, asking if its opponent is looking for it. But Daoden is done playing games, summoning a colossal ethereal blade in the sky, and bringing it crashing down on the helpless beast. As the drake's body crumbles, Daoden drives his own sword, Cryon, into its heart, beginning the true ritual. He reveals this was his goal all along. He'd hunted this specific beast for a year, all to use its heart to temper his blade. With the process started, he gives the beast one final command: die. Cryon greedily absorbs the drake's core essence, drawing out the raw blue energy that defined the monster's power. The sword begins to transform, its dormant runes blazing to life, shattering its old shell and reforging itself anew, becoming something far more powerful and far more sinister. He chuckles, congratulating his weapon on its newfound strength. Zeon can only stare in disbelief. The old man is talking to his sword. He's not just powerful, he's completely insane. The battle finally over, Daoden turns his attention back to his apprentice. He finds Zeon collapsed on the ground. Amused, the boy somehow managed to survive the cataclysm. Zeon barely has the strength to reply, admitting it was a very close call. In a flashback, we see the shockwave had sent him flying, his body battered and bleeding as he tumbled through the air, screaming in absolute terror before strange, dark spikes of sand erupted from the ground, ensnaring him just before he hit the lava below. He can't believe he survived, marveling at his own cockroach-like resilience. He explains that constantly dodging the shockwaves from their insane fight actually honed his reflexes just enough to live. Daeodin seems almost impressed, but there's no time to rest. He grabs Zeon, warning him that with the boss dead, the entire dungeon is about to collapse. Zeon panics, confused as to why his master is manhandling him instead of just running. The old man just lets out a terrifying laugh. With a final farewell, he hurls Zeon straight into the collapsing rift, the boy's curses echoing as he's swallowed by the vortex. He lands unceremoniously in a vast desert, tumbling through the sand as the portal snaps shut behind him. Spitting out a mouthful of sand, he looks around, utterly lost, only to see Daeodin standing there as if he'd just taken a leisurely stroll. The old man calmly explains that the collapsing rift serves as an exit, and now that they're out, the real conversation can begin. Listen up, Claude. Daeodin reveals he needs Zeon's sand manipulating ability, but as he is now, the boy is completely useless, so he's going to give him a choice. He points towards civilization. Zeon can go back to Neo Sol and return to his old life, or he can follow Daeodin and be forged into a better Claude than he currently is. Stunned, Zeon asks how long this training would even take. The old man is brutally honest. He has no idea. It could be months, years, or even decades. The weight of the decision falls on Zeon's shoulders. Daeodin lays it out plainly. Will he return to the familiar comfort of his old life, or will he take a gamble with a 99% chance of death? Faced with an impossible choice, Zeon can only laugh, a bead of sweat tracing a line through the grime on his face. He looks up, a feral, defiant grin spreading across his lips as he asks the old man if he's completely insane. Would he really give up comfort and civilization to walk a scorching desert with a madman? Daeodin's expression is unwavering. That's exactly right. With a sigh of resignation, Zeon gets to his feet, deciding there's nothing more to talk about. He turns to face the endless wasteland, his decision made. He will follow. The reason is simple. Zeon is the type who always pays back his debts, especially to those who piss him off, and that list now includes the old geezer standing before him. He admits Daeodin is overwhelmingly stronger than anyone he's ever met, and likely ever will meet. A twisted grin spreads across the old man's face. Intrigued, so he's certain? Zeon's eyes burn with newfound resolve. He's certain that by following this monster he'll become stronger than anyone else. Daeodin's grin widens into a jagged snarl, promising the boy that a day will come when he regrets that certainty. With that, he turns and barks a single command. Follow me, you idiot. The first lesson of his hellish training has begun. Under the oppressive glare of the desert sun, Zeon screams in agony, his pleas for a slower pace lost to the wind. 6 hours of nonstop walking, and he's already at his limit, desperately begging for a break. But his new master just keeps walking, silent and implacable, a grim figure on the horizon. Zeon finally snaps, screaming at the old man's back, his frustration boiling over. The heat is unbearable, easily over 50 degrees Celsius, and every step is a struggle, as his boots sink deep into the shifting sand. He knows at this rate, heat stroke is inevitable. He's gonna die out here. Daeodin finally stops, turning to call Zeon a complete fool. He can't believe the boy hasn't even utilized 1% of his own power. Having the ability to manipulate sand, yet struggling to walk on it, is the very definition of pathetic. Zeon explodes in frustration, screaming that it's easy for him to say. He only awakened his powers a few days ago. The old geezer's face twists with contempt. And what does that matter? He's only an F rank, not some high-level powerhouse like Daeodin. The excuse sends Daeodin into a blind rage, and he lunges forward, grabbing the boy by his collar. He roars into Zeon's face, demanding to know what difference rank makes. Does he think anyone is born in S rank? And even if they are, so what? Is he just gonna give up on life because he wasn't born blessed? The old man's voice cracks with fury, yelling that in the eyes of others, having an ability at all is a blessing. His words hit Zeon like a physical blow, the weight of the truth stunning him into silence. Daeodin shoves him back, his anger finally subsiding. He tells the boy to stop whining and start thinking about how to use his abilities. What's the point of having all his limbs if his brain is an idiot? It's his ability. He leans in close, a menacing calm in his voice. Zeon is the only one who can figure out how to break through his own limits. And with a final, bone-chilling threat, he tightens his grip. Got it, you idiot. If you can't figure it out, consider yourself dead. Left to his own devices, Zeon focuses, his mind racing. His boots sink into the sand, and the problem becomes clear. He calls forth his power, sharp shards of sand rising around him as he tests his limits. He can control the sand within a 5-meter radius. It's not much, but it has to be enough. The biggest issue is the sand sinking under his feet, draining his stamina with every step. His eyes light up with an idea. If he can condense the sand and make it solid. It works! For a moment, his feet no longer sink, and walking becomes effortless. He takes a few triumphant, albeit wobbly, steps forward, feeling like a genius. But the victory is short-lived. He quickly realizes the mana consumption is far too severe for a long journey. He tries another tactic, focusing mana directly into his legs, but that isn't using his actual ability. Daeodon watches from a distance, a flicker of something almost like pride in his eyes. To be young, and to keep trying without giving up. That is the privilege of youth. He can see the boy's potential. Though his official rank is F, his mana utilization is already at a D rank level. And then, after countless failures, Zeon finally has his breakthrough. It works! He shouts for the old geezer to look, proudly showing off his glowing feet. By controlling only the tiny amount of sand directly touching his soles, he can walk with ease. High on his own success, he gets cocky, flipping the old man off and laughing that he can't do this. Before he can even finish his taunt, a fist slams into his head. Daeodon looms over his unconscious body, annoyed by his scampering. Don't waste unnecessary energy, he growls, or you'll die. He nudges the boy, telling him to get up, but Zeon doesn't move, a bandage now slapped haphazardly on his head. The old man panics, yelling for the idiot to breathe. Zeon's eyes flutter open, the world a dizzying blur. He's greeted by the smirking face of his new master, casually chewing on a piece of jerky while complaining about the wasted time. Muttering about his injuries, Zeon is cut short when a piece of jerky lands right in front of him. It's tough, dried meat, a poor substitute for a real meal. With a sigh, Daeodon begins to tell a story from his youth, a time long past. He speaks of a world where being weak wasn't a death sentence, where protecting the less fortunate was considered a noble act. The old man reminds him that the world has changed. His lesson is simple and brutal. If you want to die, lie there comfortably. If not, get up on your own 2 feet. Heaving himself up, Zeon reluctantly gnaws on the jerky. As he chews, a flicker of understanding appears in his eyes. He watches the old man, sitting alone in the vast emptiness, and a thought dawns on him. Daeodon isn't just eating. He's softening the tough meat with his saliva, a simple survival trick in a desert with no moisture. The old geezer could have just told him, but Zeon now understands the lesson. It's not about giving him a fish, it's about showing him how to catch one. Having figured out the trick, Zeon walks forward with renewed confidence, cheekily asking for another piece, only to be told to shut his trap. The frigid desert night gives way to a new day, and Zeon wakes up shivering and miserable. Not only is he freezing, but the crazy old geezer kept him awake all night by talking to his sword, leaving Zeon to question the man's sanity. As a desperate thirst takes hold, Zeon is about to ask for water when he sees it. Daeodon is wringing out his clothes, drinking the dew that collected on them overnight. Zeon realizes the bastard kept this survival trick to himself, and it all clicks into place, the reason Daeodon slept with his clothes spread out. Vowing to get revenge one day, Zeon copies the action, licking the precious moisture from his own clothes. Daeodon calls him an idiot, which sends Zeon into a rage. "I'm not an idiot, I'm a dumbass," he yells, a distinction his master readily accepts. But the lesson isn't over. Daeodon asks if he can feel it. Confused, Zeon looks up, a faint trembling in the sand beneath him. The vibrations grow stronger, and he realizes it's not just one or two things approaching. From the darkness, a horde of monstrous creatures emerges. Daeodon identifies them as bighorn hyenas, nocturnal beasts they've unfortunately run into at dawn. With a taunting grin, he asks Zeon if he thinks he can survive on his own, or if he needs his master's help again. But something has changed in Zeon. He meets the old man's gaze with a manic grin of his own, giving him a thumbs up as he declares he doesn't need any help. He's going to figure this out and survive on his own. As the pack lunges, Zeon's eyes glow with power. He unleashes a torrent of sand, shaping it into massive spikes that erupt from the ground, impaling the first wave of hyenas. But as he fights, he screams in frustration. There are just too many of them. He clutches his chest, realizing that before the beasts can bite him to death, he'll run out of mana and die first. He stands alone against a sea of glowing red eyes. He needs a plan, something that focuses on efficiency and mana management, not just raw power. He concentrates, trying to think of a better way to use his sand, when a hyena lunges, interrupting his focus. He instinctively bats it away, screaming at the cowardly beast for the cheap shot. But not before its teeth tear a hole in his arm. Looking at the fresh wound, he grimly calls it a new ventilation hole, and that's when it hits him. Ventilation, hole. He looks at the charging horde. He just needs to put holes in them. A chilling grin spreads across his face as he forges tiny, hyper-condensed sand bullets at his fingertips. With a single, fluid motion, he unleashes a barrage of them, each one a pinpoint of death that strikes true, piercing the hyenas' skulls with deadly mana-efficient precision. Cackling like a madman, Zeon revels in his newfound efficiency, realizing that whether their heads explode or just get a hole punched through them, dead is dead. He finally understands what the old man meant, that in combat, mana is directly linked to your life. Wasting it, in a panic, will only lead to an early grave, so he must fight with absolute cost efficiency. He figures even the old geezer would have to take them down slowly, one by one, but his celebration is cut short when a beast bites his master. Instead of pain, his master just laughs at its feeble attempt. Daeodon taunts the beast to face him, saying it tickles. A terrifying, predatory grin spreads across his face as he readies himself. Zeon watches in horror, realizing the old geezer is about to unleash his true power. With a deafening roar that shakes the very ground, a storm of invisible blades tears through the battlefield, instantly wiping out the entire horde in a flash of gore. The ground itself is torn asunder, leaving a massive crater where the pack once stood. Staring at the aftermath, Zeon can barely comprehend the scale of destruction, wondering if his master is even human. He makes a mental note to watch his mouth around the master, when a sudden growl snaps him out of his shock. It's the alpha female, pinned under Daioden's foot but still snarling with defiance. The beast unleashes a torrent of lightning. The Daioden simply identifies it as a force field, realizing the creature was far stronger than a mere B rank. Zeon screams for the old geezer to watch out, but his master simply catches the raw lightning with his bare hand. Zeon's brain completely short-circuits at the impossible sight. Daioden, on the other hand, looks utterly refreshed, commenting that the tingly sensation was a nice massage for his stiff shoulders. And now that the massage is over, he puts the alpha down for good, with a single devastating punch. Zeon can only laugh, deciding it's probably better for his own mental health to just stop trying to understand the monster he calls master. Sometime later, the battle is over and the spoils have been gathered. Zeon, now sporting a new hyena pelt hat, calls out to his master. Daioden holds up the alpha's horn, noting that its lightning attribute will make for a fine weapon when properly refined. He then tosses a newly crafted dagger, made from one of the horns, to Zeon. With a wave of his hand, Daioden opens his inventory, telling Zeon that from now on, there will be no more free handouts. He demonstrates how to butcher the corpse, explaining that while most of the hyena's meat is toxic, the flank is perfectly safe to eat. Seeing Zeon staring blankly, he snaps at him to hurry up before the sun gets too high. With their supplies restocked, the two continue their long journey through the desert. For the first time in a long time, Zeon is in high spirits. He's got a full stomach, and thanks to his new skill, Sand Walk, trekking through the desert is now a breeze. His new confidence makes him cocky, and he starts teasing the old man about pushing himself too hard at his age. He smugly declares he dodged the predictable punch this time, only to get slammed face first into the sand by a different attack. Dodd stands over him, muttering about how one shitty skill has gone straight to the kid's head. Spitting sand, Zeon complains that he can't believe he got decked while already dying of thirst. But as he grumbles, he suddenly senses a change in the air. It's moisture, and the fact that the old geezer is looking in the exact same direction confirms he isn't imagining things. Just beyond the next massive dune, their salvation awaits. They crest the hill and lay eyes on something Zeon had only ever heard about in rumors. His parched face breaks into a smile of sheer disbelief and joy. An oasis, sparkling like a jewel in the middle of the desolate wasteland. Zeon loses all composure and sprints down the dune toward the water. His master simply lets out a weary sigh at the boy's childish display. Screaming in delight, he finally reaches the water's edge. Without a second thought, he plunges his face into the cool water, letting the life-giving liquid soak into his parched body. In the brutal 50-degree heat of the desert, it's a feeling of pure bliss. But as his happiness peaks, his eye catches something strange reflecting in the water. It's a blinding, warm light emanating from the depths. A strange lethargy begins to creep over him, and his mind starts to go blank. Instantly sensing the danger, Daioden roars for the idiot to snap out of it, and launches himself down the dune toward the oasis. Just in time, as the beautiful illusion shatters, a massive, terrifying predator bursts from the water, revealing itself to be a monstrous sand angler, its glowing lure having served as the perfect bait. Just as its cavernous jaws are about to clamp down on Zeon, Daioden snatches him by the collar, yanking him back to the safety of the shore. With his student out of harm's way, the old geezer leaps high into the air, gripping his massive blade with both hands. He brings it down in a single, devastating arc, cleaving the sand angler clean in two. As the beast's blood rains down, Zeon can only stare in slack-jawed awe, watching as a rainbow forms in the sky. Daioden lands calmly, using a severed piece of the monster's wing as a makeshift umbrella. He casually explains that the creature is a sand angler that lures its prey with its lantern, before planting his fist squarely in Zeon's face. Enraged, he berates the boy for throwing away every lesson he's been taught. He screams that idiots who let their guard down in a moment of relief are always the first to die in this god-forsaken desert. Zeon can only agree, and after a long, weary sigh, Daioden points to the massive carcass. His next order is simple: skin it. He explains that a C-rank sand angler's belly hide is soft and elastic, making it perfect for crafting a robe. Still dazed, Zeon's brain short-circuits as he asks if his master needs a new robe. Daioden's patience finally snaps, symbols of pure rage flaring up as he screams that the robe is for Zeon himself. He grabs the boy, questioning how his intelligence seems to be dropping by the minute. As Zeon bleeds from his ears, muttering an apology, Daioden finally calms down, noting how much the sand angler has mutated. He tells Zeon it's a descendant of a fish that once lived on Earth, a creature the boy has never seen. Zeon stares at the monstrous corpse, deciding that fish must be terrifying. He gets to work with his new dagger but finds the monster's hide is far tougher than he expected. Daioden simply lies on the monster back, mocking his apprentice's pathetic attempts. Annoyed at the tough hide and his master's jeers, Zeon decides to get serious. He focuses, infusing his dagger with mana, and finally slices cleanly through the thick skin. With renewed focus, he carefully whittles down a fin into a makeshift needle. Then he carves out tendons from the flesh to use as thread, a look of intense concentration on his face. With a sparkle of triumph in his eye, he proudly presents his masterpiece. It's a complete and utter failure, a mangled patchwork of hide that's utterly useless. Lying on the monster's back, Daoden doesn't even bother getting up, simply calling him an idiot for turning a perfectly good fish into trash. As night falls across the desert, Xian toils away, determined to get it right this time. Finally, after a whopping 8 failed attempts, he screams in triumph, holding up his finished masterpiece. He's so proud, he even jokingly welcomes his master to the grand opening of the Xian boutique. But his bravado vanishes instantly, and he clutches his new robe defensively as his master approaches. Daoden, however, has other plans. He ignores the robe completely, instead holding up the sand angler's pulsating gallbladder. Xian points in utter disgust, demanding to know what that foul-looking organ is. With a wicked grin, Daoden explains it's a rare medicine, giving the boy a simple ultimatum: eat every last bit, or die. Muttering that he hopes his master's arm falls off, Xian reluctantly takes the massive, slimy organ. He steels himself with a nervous gulp, knowing he has no other choice. Figuring it's better than a beating, he plunges his face into the gallbladder, taking a massive, desperate bite. But to his surprise, he isn't met with a disgusting taste. Instead, a strange, ethereal sensation fills his mouth. It's like eating a cloud, light and airy, and no matter how much he eats, he never feels full. Just as he's polishing it off, his master's voice cuts through his strange dining experience. Daoden sits by a roaring campfire, casually roasting some of the angler's meat, and informs Xian that it's time for him to burn to death. Before Xian can even ask what he means, a searing, fiery energy erupts from within his chest. He lets out a blood-curdling scream as unimaginable pain tears through his body. The heat is unbearable, a feeling far beyond burning, as if his very soul is being set ablaze. His body and his mana spiral completely out of control, feeling like a star is collapsing in his stomach. Through the haze of agony, he sees his master watching him, a grim expression on his face. Daoden simply tells him to endure it, before turning his gaze to the now dry oasis bed. He muses that everything, like this oasis, is fleeting and will soon be swallowed by the quicksand, as if it never existed. Fed up with the old man's philosophical ramblings, Xian lands a saw, throws his legs in air in pain. He screams for his master to cut the sentimental crap and just save him from this torment. Daoden, unfazed, simply looks over his shoulder at his screaming apprentice. As the night wears on, Xian's screams turn to pleas, begging the old geezer to put him out of his misery. The agonizing process continues until his body can't take any more, and he finally collapses into blessed unconsciousness. Slowly, Xian's eyes flutter open, his vision blurry as he returns to the world of the living. The first thing he sees is his master's upside-down face looming over him, casually asking if he's awake. The sudden jump scare sends Xian scrambling backward, screaming that he nearly had a heart attack. With a smirk, Daoden asks if he slept well, to which Xian retorts that he passed out from the pain. The old man brushes it off and asks a simple question: how does his body feel? Xian pauses to check, and a look of pure shock crosses his face. Something is completely different. A wave of incredible power washes over him. His entire body feels as light as a single grain of sand. He clenches his fists, feeling muscles as tough as wire, and a mana pool that surges within him like a raging storm. He can't believe it. This sudden, explosive growth is unlike anything he's ever experienced. He asks his master what just happened. Daoden explains that it's all thanks to the sand angler's gallbladder, a rare and priceless medicine for any who dare to cross the scorched desert. Xian is floored. He can't understand why his master would give him something so incredibly valuable. The old man barks that it's because Xian is so damn weak. If he's going to be dragged along, he needs to at least be a little useful. Energized by the backhanded encouragement, Xian eagerly promises to become useful and reliable. 4 days later, the massive sand angler has been picked clean, its bleached skeleton a monument to their feast. With their bellies full and Xian's power boosted, Daoden announces it's time to set off once more. Xian replies with a confident yes, a wide, toothy grin plastered on his face. The master and apprentice resume their journey across the endless sea of sand. Before long, a violent sandstorm kicks up, threatening to flay them alive. Xian pulls up his new hood, but finds he barely even notices the swirling vortex of sand. Thanks to the power he absorbed from the gallbladder, the deadly storm feels like nothing more than a refreshing breeze. His master, on the other hand, plods forward in complete silence, not having uttered a single word for days. Xian starts to wonder if the grumpy old man is going through his periods. After 2 straight weeks of non-stop silent walking, a terrible suspicion begins to dawn on Xian. The old geezer is completely and utterly lost. Just as he's about to voice his concerns, the ground behind him erupts. A monstrous, giant ant-like creature bursts from the sand. Still riding the high from his power-up, Xian nonchalantly tells the screeching beast to shut up and delivers a sand bullet. He lets out a weary sigh, wondering how much further they have to go, but is interrupted by a sudden, hacking cough. He looks back, surprised to see the monster is completely unfazed by his attack. This thing's hide is far tougher than he expected. Daoden's expression hardens. He'd hoped they could just pass by, but it seems that won't be possible. His unique perception reveals the terrifying truth. They're standing on top of an entire nest, surrounded by countless monsters. Realizing he has to get serious, Zeon's eyes begin to glow as he taps into his newfound power. He slams his palms onto the ground, focusing his mana to command the very sand beneath his feet. In an instant, the dunes come alive as a massive swarm of the giant ants bursts from the earth, their glowing red eyes locking onto their prey. Zeon prepares to attack, calling forth a sandblaster. A massive maelstrom of sand erupts at his command, engulfing the entire area in a swirling vortex of his own making. He actually finds the chaos strangely pleasant, reveling in the abundance of his element. For a sand mage, a sandstorm is the perfect battlefield. But his satisfaction vanishes when he notices the old geezer has completely disappeared, leaving him to face the swarm alone. He furiously screams after his master, cursing him for playing dirty and having so little camaraderie that he'd just abandoned his own student. The insults flow freely until a cold sweat drips down his back. He suddenly worries that the old man might have actually hurt him. His panic is cut short by a different kind of terror. His enhanced perception, which he thought was only a 10-meter radius, suddenly screams a warning of an unimaginable threat. Living in the desert had taught Zeon to be constantly alert, his senses honed to react instantly to any nearby monster. This constant vigilance had been the key to his survival in these unforgiving lands. But what he sensed just now was different. It wasn't just a monster. It was an overwhelming presence, a feeling of sheer terror on a scale he couldn't comprehend. And then the ground itself shatters. An entire army of giant, monstrous ants bursts from beneath the dunes, their countless red eyes locking onto him. Stunned by the ambush, Zeon dodges frantically, his mind reeling. Where did this massive army even come from? His first instinct is to call out to his master, his voice laced with panic as the true scale of the threat becomes clear. But Diadon simply watches from a distant rock pillar, looking on as if this is nothing more than casual entertainment. A wave of shame washes over Zeon. He chastises himself, realizing he can't keep acting like a child crying for help. It all clicks into place. There's no way his master wouldn't have detected a nest this massive. This wasn't an accident. This is a test. A crazed, determined grin spreads across his face. Fine, a test it is. He declares that whether it's 1,000 or 10,000, bugs are still just bugs. Fueled by a surge of adrenaline and defiance, Zeon launches himself headfirst into the writhing swarm of monsters. His newfound confidence is immediately shattered as he's sent flying by a powerful blow he never saw coming. He quickly learns his bravado was misplaced. His attacks barely scratch their tough carapaces. Flung through the air and landing on the back of one of the ants, he screams that he takes it all back. Completely overwhelmed, he furiously curses the monsters for ganging up on him, yelling about their lack of conscience. He desperately demands they fight him one-on-one like men, his plea lost in the chittering of the endless horde. As he's helplessly carried along, he can only mutter a curse at the sheer, overwhelming number of enemies surrounding him. In a desperate gambit, he manipulates the sand beneath him, creating a pillar to launch himself into the air. From his new vantage point, the horrifying truth is laid bare. He's not standing on the ground. The entire area is one gigantic living ant nest. Bleeding and battered, he grits his teeth. He needs to get airborne and reassess the situation. But his plan is cut short as a searing pain rips through him. He thought they couldn't fight in the air. He was dead wrong. To his absolute horror, the ants begin to climb over each other, forming a grotesque living tower to drag him from the sky. His mind reels in disbelief. This shouldn't be possible. Their coordination is unnatural. Before he can react, a powerful leg smashes into him, sending him rocketing back down towards the swarm. He's tossed about like a ragdoll, completely at the mercy of the relentless, unified force. He crashes into the ground hard, spitting up a mouthful of blood as the crushing impacts take their toll. Struggling to his hands and knees, he gasps for air. But as he looks up, his eyes, though bloodied and bruised, burn with a defiant fire that refuses to be extinguished. From his perch, Daodon watches his apprentice's struggle, his expression unreadable. Zeon's face twists, not in pain, but into a savage, blood-soaked grin. He's not done yet. Pushing himself to his feet, he glares toward his master, roaring that the old geezer had better watch closely, because he's going to survive this hell. For the first time, a small, approving smirk touches Daodon's lips. That, he thinks, is the attitude his student needs to survive. His voice, calm and powerful, carries across the chaotic battlefield. He tells Zeon that in this desert world, his ability is a blessing that could have granted him a comfortable, easy life. But, he continues, that's where Zeon's story would have ended, living in blissful ignorance like the other close-minded idiots who don't even know why the world is like this. An awakener's strength is power itself, and there's nothing more coveted than an ability like Zeon's. Daodon lays down the ultimate challenge. Zeon has survived this long as a weakling. Now it's time to prove he can survive as an awakener to the very end of this crazy world. Daodon recalls the past, a time of utter devastation known as the tragedy of 100 years ago. A single ray of light had laid waste to an entire city in an instant. He remembers the sight of loved ones being torn apart before his very eyes. It's a memory etched deep into his bones, as vivid now as it was then. To survive in this world, he explains, one must carry these burdens and constantly walk the razor's edge between life and death. A predatory grin spreads across his face, wants to see if Zeon has what it takes. Zeon, however, has found a new resolve. He won't just survive, he'll dominate. With a blood-soaked, manic grin, he roars that the ants are the ones who should be scared. As the swarm charges, he prepares his counterattack. He gathers the sand around him, compressing it into a single point of immense power. He calls it a high-pressure compressed sand missile, his simplest and crudest attack. But by infusing it with gravity, wind, and every last drop of his energy, its power is amplified dozens of times over, transforming it into a weapon of mass destruction. He unleashes the attack with a triumphant scream, declaring the end for the ant horde. This, he roars, is their punishment for not killing him when they had the chance. Don watches from afar, chuckling at his students' sudden surge of battle-crazed excitement. The attack leaves Zeon winded but victorious, surrounded by the impaled husks of his enemies. A massive canyon is carved into the desert floor, a testament to the raw power he just unleashed. Pumping his fist, Zeon screams towards his master, demanding to know if he saw that incredible display. But his victory lap is cut short by a brutal, unseen blow that sends him flying. Stunned and confused, he can't comprehend what just happened. A new, far more terrifying ant appears behind him, a monster that moved without making a single sound or revealing its presence. He struggles to understand how it snuck up on him, but a sharp, burning pain draws his attention. Looking down, he sees viscous fluid dripping from the wound. It's poison. He grits his teeth in agony. No wonder his mana control faltered. The poison is directly attacking his mana vessel. He curses the foul creatures for their underhanded tactic. But his defiance is met with another crushing blow, slamming him into the sand. His vision blurs as he's dragged beneath the dunes, his strength failing him. He awakens in the horrifying depths of the anthill, the darkness illuminated by hundreds of glowing red eyes. He's been taken to the nest's nursery, and he's about to become baby food for a swarm of giant larvae. The poison has left him completely paralyzed, a helpless offering to the hungry brood. With a sickening crunch, one of the larvae sinks its mandibles into his arm. His eyes widen in pure terror. He can't move. He's going to be eaten alive. As the reality of his impending gruesome death sets in, his mind begins to give way to despair. He closes his eyes, thinking it's all over, but something within Zeon ignites. He smashes his fist into the ground, a defiant tremor shaking the cavern. The force of the blow sends a nearby ant reeling. He struggles to his knees, a broken, hysterical laugh bubbling up from his chest. This can't be the end. His life flashes before his eyes, but all he sees is a string of misfortunes. There isn't a single good memory to hold on to, and this pathetic realization fills him with an uncontrollable rage. He roars in fury. He is so unbelievably pissed off, he absolutely refuses to die like this. The second rune on his arm starts glowing. A brilliant burst of energy erupts from his body. The explosion of power rips through the nursery, vaporizing the larvae and sending the guards flying. The cavern walls crack and shatter under the immense pressure of his unleashed rage. The entire nest begins to collapse, consumed by the explosive burst of power. From the ashes of the collapsing nest, Zeon rises, his body coursing with an unfamiliar power. The rune on his arm is transformed, now showing 2 glowing bars. He realizes, in shock, that he's ranked up. The poison is gone, his mana overflowing. He marvels at the change. This power is on a completely different level from his F-rank days. He has truly evolved. His eyes, now burning with golden light, narrow with newfound confidence. But his moment of triumph is cut short as a gargantuan shadow falls over him. The true boss of this dungeon has appeared. The monster, a hulking, armored ant that survived the nest's collapse, smashes down with terrifying force, sending Zeon hurtling through the air. Pinned beneath its massive legs, Zeon grits his teeth, marveling at the creature's raw power to smash through solid bedrock. He launches a barrage of sand blasts, but his attack bounces harmlessly off its reinforced carapace. He stares in disbelief. Not a single scratch. This monster is on another level entirely. Pushing himself up, Zeon realizes brute force is useless here. He stares down the terrifying beast, his mind racing. He can't win by attacking its impenetrable armor directly. If he can't break it, and he can't pierce it, he'll have to find another way. Then, an insane idea sparks in his mind. He doesn't need to break the armor. He just needs to tear it off. The armored ant queen charges, a blur of speed and aggression. Zeon stands his ground, gathering sand and mana into his fists. If he can't break the armor, he'll use his sand to twist and rip the entire shell off its body. The monster, trapped in Zeon's crushing sand, starts condensing a strange energy between its tentacles. Zeon screams in agony, not from the physical blow, but from an invisible assault. The queen has unleashed a high-frequency vibration attack, and blood begins to pour from Zeon's ears and eyes. His very brain feels like it's about to explode. The world distorts around him as the sonic waves intensify, threatening to liquefy him from the inside out. Zeon stares through the pain, realizing the beast had been hiding this trump card until the very end. He meets the queen's gaze, his own sanity fracturing under the strain. With a blood-curdling roar, he puts everything on the line, determined to see this through, until one of them dies. But his body, still too weak to handle this level of power, betrays him. A sickening snap echoes through the cavern as something inside him breaks. His vision blurs, his power vanishes, and blood erupts from every orifice. He's pushed himself too far. He collapses, his consciousness fading, his body completely spent. As darkness takes him, he curses his own pathetic weakness. But just before he hits the ground, a strong hand catches him. His master, Daeodon, had been watching the whole time. Daeodon holds his battered student, nonchalantly telling him he's still damn weak. A faint, bloody smile cracks Zeon's lips as he looks up at the old man. With his last bit of strength, he cheekily tells his master that he'll let him have the last hit. Daeodon can only chuckle at the boy's insolence, even at death's door. He admits Zeon isn't completely useless, gesturing to the scene behind them. The C-rank wolf ant queen lies dead, impaled by his sword. He tells Zeon he fought well against an impossible opponent and has earned his right to live, but his words fall on deaf ears. Zeon can only offer a pained grin, his eardrums completely ruptured by the queen's sonic attack. Daeodon notes the ruptured eardrums with a click of his tongue. With no ceremony at all, he grabs Zeon by the collar and begins dragging him through the rubble. A confused Zeon can only wonder where the old geezer is taking him now. Daeodon leads them to a small, glowing orb nestled in the collapsed cavern. Zeon stares in awe at the pulsating light. It's the queen ant's egg. Daeodon grins maniacally as writes on the wall with his finger, revealing his plan. He's going to feed the egg to Zeon as medicine, claiming it has a lovely strawberry flavor. With his eardrums shattered, Zeon could only read the message his master carved into the rock: medicine. Staring at the pulsating ant queen's egg, Zeon couldn't believe what the old man was implying. He looks to his master, desperately hoping this wouldn't be another agonizing ordeal like the sand angler's gallbladder he was forced to eat before. But with his ears completely useless, he misses Daeodon's nonchalant reply that eating it would probably kill him. Deaf to the warning, Zeon decides to put his faith in the man who saved him. If the old geezer says it's medicine, then it must be. Without another moment's hesitation, he swallows the glowing egg whole. To his shock, a wave of sweet, unbelievable flavor washes over him. It's the most delicious thing he's ever tasted. His eyes widen with delight as he immediately asks his master if there's any more. But the blissful moment is shattered as an unbearable agony erupts from within. Vicious red thorns burst through his skin, impaling him from the inside out. This horrific phenomenon has a name: Huanjiang. It's a term that literally means the twisting and turning of one's intestines. Because the queen ant's egg isn't medicine at all, it's a lethal poison that forces the consumer's organs to violently twist and tear themselves apart. In other words, his insides were being shredded and flipped inside out, a fate worse than any he'd faced before. Writhing on the ground, Zeon lets out an blood-curdling scream, demanding to know what his master had just fed him. Daeodon merely plugs his ears, complaining about the noise and telling the boy to get used to this kind of pain if he ever hopes to survive. But how could anyone get used to the feeling of their own body destroying itself from within? He collapses, his body convulsing as he violently coughs up whatever remains inside him. As black blood pours from his mouth, Zeon feels his life force fading fast. An image of a happier time flashes before his eyes, a moment by the fire where he thought he had finally found someone he could trust. But as his vision fades to black, he can only curse himself for being a fool who trusted the wrong person. And with one last, shuddering breath, Zeon's body falls limp. Ignoring his seemingly dead apprentice, Daeodon turns his attention to the real prize, the corpse of the Ant Queen. With a savage grin, he smashes his fist deep into the monster's carcass. He rummages around inside the mangled beast, searching for its core. And with a grunt of satisfaction, he rips out the monster's mana crystal. It's a massive, high-purity crystal, far more valuable than any found in a mine. He's hit the jackpot. Deciding the ant's body might have other uses, Daeodon resolves to take everything. He retrieves his massive greatsword, a silent companion in this desolate place. The sword's voice echoes in his mind, asking if he's truly content to let his apprentice die like this. Daeodon's expression hardens. He knows what he's doing, but admits there's no other way. He reminds it of the harsh reality. If the boy is weak, he dies. That is his fate. The voice presses on, reminding Daeodon that their time is running out. Daeodon stands over Zeon's lifeless body, waiting. Suddenly, the dark, toxic sand around Zeon begins to stir and bubble with a sinister energy. Leaning in close, the old master calls out, testing to see if the boy has finally woken up. The response is a cataclysmic explosion of sand and power that rips through the cavern. Brushing dust from his cloak, Daeodon scolds the disrespectful punk for kicking up such a mess. But emerging from the swirling vortex of sand is a new Zeon, reborn through poison and pain, his power now on a completely different scale. Daeodon watches on, a hint of a smirk on his face. The dumbass actually survived. Daeodon gets blasted by the force of the attack, a flicker of surprise on his face. The entire cavern shakes from the explosive release of Zeon's pent-up rage and sand magic. Blinded by fury, Zeon screams out, demanding to know why his master would try to kill him after everything. His eyes glowing with power, he reaches out, vowing that he will never forgive this betrayal. With a roar, he summons a barrage of massive hardened sand spikes from the cavern ceiling, aiming to impale his master. The relentless assault barrels towards Daeodon, who simply stands his ground against the onslaught. Still reeling from the pain and betrayal, Zeon gathers his breath, his power swirling around him. But his furious assault comes to a screeching halt, his glowing eyes widening in pure disbelief. As the dust settles, Daeodon stands there completely unharmed, as if the attack was nothing more than a stiff breeze. Zeon is utterly dumbfounded. He can't comprehend how his master took that full-force attack without a single scratch. The old master simply sighs, looking at the boy with a hint of pity and calling him a dumbass. He nonchalantly asks why he would bother with a complicated poison when he could kill someone so weak with a single flick to the forehead. Daeodon begins to explain the true purpose behind the agonizing ordeal Zeon just endured. He reveals that the queen ant's egg is both a lethal poison and a heavenly medicine, depending on the user. Its primary purpose is to violently purge all the impurities hidden deep within the body. Once those impurities are gone, the empty space is then flooded with pure, untainted mana. The realization finally dawns on Zeon. His eyes, no longer glowing with rage, fill with tears of gratitude and shame. Overcome with emotion, he tackles his master in a tight hug, wailing apologies for ever doubting the old geezer. He clings to Daeodon, crying. He realizes that his hearing has been fully restored. Daeodon, who clearly hates being hugged by a man, grumbles for the sniveling dumbass to let go. As this touching reunion unfolds, the voice of Daeodon's greatsword echoes in his mind once more. The sword points out what they both know, that the boy truly could have died. Daeodon clenches his fist, admitting to his silent companion that it was a trashy, desperate gamble he had to take. With the lesson learned and no time to waste, Daeodon unceremoniously slings Zeon over his shoulder like a sack of potatoes. Zeon, still weak from the ordeal and the emotional whiplash, is utterly confused by the sudden manhandling. Daeodon flashes a wicked grin, telling the boy not to forgive him for what he put him through. He points towards the exit of the cavern, declaring it's time to get a move on. Seeing the maniacal look on his master's face, Zeon gets a very bad feeling about what's coming next. Meanwhile, some of the desert's local wildlife are just trying to live their lives in peace. Their peace is shattered as a massive pillar of sand erupts. Daeodon tears through the desert at an impossible speed, dragging a screaming Zeon along for the ride. The master just laughs, telling the boy this is what he gets for being unconscious for 4 whole days. Suddenly, however, Daeodon's wild expression turns serious as he spots something on the horizon. Draped over his master's shoulder, Zeon can only ask what's wrong now. But then he sees it too, and his eyes widen in pure, unadulterated terror. Looming in the distance is a creature of impossible scale, a walking mountain of stone and shell. Zeon can barely form the words, asking what in the fresh hell that thing is. Daeodon calmly notes that the world just doesn't seem to want to give them a moment's rest. He identifies the behemoth as the Mobile Fortress, Archelon. It's a B-rank turtle monster, but its defensive power is said to surpass even that of an A-rank creature. Zeon's mind is blown, especially when Daeodon adds the most insane part. People actually tame these things and ride them. The master tells his apprentice to take a good, long look at the true scale of the world. It's a world where there are monsters capable of riding other monsters that dwarf entire mountains. As they watch, a lone figure leaps from the very top of the Archelon's massive shell. The figure lands with a cataclysmic impact, kicking up a pillar of sand that reaches the clouds. Zeon is stunned by the sudden arrival, while Daeodon just looks on as if expecting company. A man with a monocle adjusts his eyewear, coolly remarking that it's been a long time, and he addresses the old master by his name, Daeodon. Daeodon greets the newcomer with a toothy, mocking grin, calling him Pavilsa, and pointing out he seems to have lost more teeth. Pavilsa sighs wearily, retorting that Daeodon is the real freak for being so energetic at over 100 years old. Cutting to the chase, Daeodon asks why Pavilsa here, this isn't his territory, while Zeon remains utterly lost. Pavilsa explains he's here because of an infestation of scavengers, a reason that only adds to Zeon's confusion. Daeodon scoffs at the idea of running from mere scavengers, but Pavilsa calls it wisdom. Zeon, meanwhile, is having a crisis, wondering why all these old geezers are so ridiculously strong. Aren't you supposed to grow weaker when you get older? Just as their bickering begins, the colossal head of the Archelon rises from the sand behind Pavilsa, summoned by his call. The sheer scale of the living fortress is revealed, dwarfing the 3 men standing before it. Zeon can only look up in stunned disbelief, his mind struggling to process the sight. With a simple command to follow, Daeodon and Pavilsa lead the way towards the mobile fortress. Zeon cautiously follows, deciding it's probably best to just keep his mouth shut for now. Pavilsa finally seems to notice Zeon, turning to Daeodon and asking if the boy is a new subordinate. With a wicked smile, Daeodon lifts Zeon by his hood, casually stating he was just picking up some trash he found. Pavilsa breaks into a fit of laughter at the absurd sight. He jokes that with Daeodon actually taking someone under his wing, the world must surely be coming to an end. Once inside, Zeon is immediately overwhelmed, his eyes wide with shock and terror at his new surroundings. He finds himself not in a monster's gut, but in a massive, thriving city, carved into a vast cavern on the Archelon's back. Pavilsa introduces this incredible place as the home of the Moat clan, a fact that stuns Zeon. Daeodon dismisses them as a bunch of delusional fools who are completely dependent on Pavilsa and his giant turtle. Pavilsa confronts him, telling him he has no right to run his mouth if he doesn't know their clan's history. Daeodon, never one to back down, fires back that they're all useless freeloaders who will be toast the second the old man dies. Pavilsa remains silent, choosing to simply ignore the escalating tension. Now in a private room, Pavilsa gestures for Daeodon to show him the goods he's brought to trade. Daeodon channels his power, opening a portal to his personal subspace inventory. An avalanche of treasure, monster parts, and legendary equipment comes pouring out, filling the room. Zeon is horrified by the spoils of a lifetime of slaughter, but Daeodon just threatens to add him to the pile. Still marveling at the hoard, Zeon asks the basic question of where it all came from. Daeodon is appalled by the boy's ignorance, berating himself for picking up such a clueless idiot. The comment sparks another round of bickering between master and apprentice, much to Pavilsa's annoyance. Moving on, Pavilsa picks up a pristine monster fang from the pile to inspect. He's thoroughly impressed, admitting that every single item Daeodon brought is a flawless top-grade piece. Daeodon cuts the flattery short, wanting to know one thing: the price. When Pavilsa suggests paying in mana crystals, Daeodon's hand immediately drifts towards the hilt of his greatsword. Pavilsa quickly backpedals, calling it a joke and asking what the humorless warrior actually wants. Daeodon lays out his first demand: a breastplate forged from the remains of the Wolf Ant Queen. And for his second item, he wants a brand new subspace tool. Zeon, completely out of his depth, can only watch as the high-stakes negotiation unfolds. Pavilsa is confused, pointing out that Daeodon has no need for a breastplate and already possesses subspace storage. In response, Daeodon grabs Zeon by the scruff of his neck and declares that the gear isn't for him, but for his new, idiotic apprentice. Pavilsa's eye widens in genuine surprise. The idea of the ruthless, solitary Daeodon actually caring for another person is almost unthinkable. He deduces that this seemingly useless boy must be far more valuable than he appears. Getting to his feet, Pavilsa bellows for someone named Kaylee. In response to his call, a heavy, ornate door begins to creak open. Both Zeon and Daeodon turn their attention to the doorway, waiting to see who emerges. Zeon can't help but blush slightly as a new person comes into view. The first thing that author shows is a woman's thick ass. She introduces herself as Kaylee, Pavilsa's granddaughter, and Zeon is immediately captivated. Pavilsa asks her about a subspace bracelet she once crafted. Kaylee explains she has something even better: a gauntlet with a perfectly crafted enchantment she's been saving. Her pride turns to shock, however, when her grandfather orders her to give that precious item to Zeon. Daeodon chuckles, impressed to see that the little girl he once knew has grown into a rare and skilled enchanter. Kaylee is flustered by the praise from the legendary warrior, barely able to stammer out a greeting. Pavilsa helps his still-dazed granddaughter to her feet. He gives her instructions to get the breastplate made and to hand over the gauntlet. Annoyed but obedient, Kaylee tells Zeon to follow her, and he happily skips along behind her. The two old-timers watch as the next generation heads off. As they walk through the grand streets of the Moat Clan city, Kaylee has a question for her new companion. She turns, asking him point-blank what his relationship is with the monster known as Daeodon. Zeon sheepishly explains it was a chance encounter, and that he's basically been a hostage ever since. Kaylee completely loses it, screams about the insanity of surviving a chance encounter with Daeodon. Seeing her terrified reaction, Zeon begins to understand. He realizes that, like him, this woman has her own trauma from dealing with the old geezer's monstrous nature. She has PTSD. Kaylee warns him that Daeodon is a monster in human skin, a fact that Zeon knows all too well. Their walk comes to an end in front of a heavy iron door. With a wild, toothy grin, Kaylee proudly presents her personal workshop. She tells a nervous Zeon to brace himself for something he's never seen before. As the door opens, Zeon is left speechless. The workshop is a treasure trove of masterfully crafted weapons and armor, each one gleaming with latent power. Kaylee passionately geeks out over her masterpiece, the gauntlet, describing its exquisite construction and functions. Zeon's eyes sparkle with excitement at the mention of an auto-repair function. Kaylee adds that it also has a fire attribute slot, allowing it to be customized into an even more powerful weapon. Overwhelmed by the incredible gift, Zeon asks if he's truly worthy of taking such a treasure. Kaylee begrudgingly confirms the order, but warns him that once an item is inserted into the attribute slot, it can never be removed. With a greedy grin, Zeon drools over his new toy, gladly accepting the terms. But as he reaches to take it, Kaylee's parental instincts kick in. She refuses to let go, starting an impromptu tug-of-war. The struggle for the precious gauntlet escalates. Kaylee hits the floor, wailing that she can't just hand over her precious child to some random nobody. Zeon cackles maniacally, declaring that her carefully raised child is his now. Suddenly, their childish squabble is interrupted by a violent tremor that shakes the entire city. Zeon clutches his prize, confused by the shaking, while Kaylee's face drains of all color. Her eyes widen in terror. She recognizes this sound. It's a cry from Archelon. They have arrived. A panicked Zeon demands to know who they are, but Kaylee can only stare upwards in absolute horror as the tremors intensify. Back in the meeting room, Daeodon and Pavilsa sit calmly, feeling the quakes as well. Pavilsa's expression hardens as he mutters about their persistence. Outside, in the vast desert, a horde of riders on monstrous beasts has surrounded the Archelon. The scavengers have finally caught up. As the whole city shakes, a panicked Kaylee drags Zeon along, sprinting up a set of stairs. Utterly confused, Zeon asks what's going on, demanding to know who the scavengers are. Kaylee explains that they're the infamous Black Shark Clan, a group of psychos whose power has been growing massively. She tells him they aren't just looters. They're killers led by a D-rank awakener, and all his core members are awakened too. They finally burst through the doors of the main hall, desperate to warn the others. Kaylee screams for her grandfather, her voice filled with pure terror. But the two old geezers are completely unfazed. Pavilsa calmly states that he saw them too. Frantic, Kaylee asks Pavilsa if they should try to move Archelon and escape. But Pavilsa's hand trembles as he declares that running is futile. Now is the time to stand and fight. She immediately offers to gather the Moat Clan's combat personnel, but her grandfather cuts her off with a sharp number. Instead, it's Daoden who slams his leg down on the table, declaring with a grin that we'll handle it. Kaylee is completely flabbergasted, wondering what he means by we. Daoden calls his useless apprentice, roaring that Zeon is taking care of this one. A stunned Zeon can only point to himself, stammering in disbelief. But Daoden isn't having it. He roars that Zeon got a treasure, so now it's time to earn it. Zeon frantically argues back, screaming that there's no way he can beat a D-rank awakener. The sheer terror is written all over his face as the impossible command sinks in. With a cold, piercing glare, Daoden asks his apprentice a simple question. Are you scared? Zeon's silence is all the answer he needs, and so Zeon is unceremoniously dumped outside of the back of the giant turtle, left to face the incoming horde alone. He grits his teeth, cursing himself for falling for such a cheap taunt. He has to admit, the old man is as sharp as a blade, and he walked right into his trap. Realizing he has no time for fear, Zeon takes a deep breath and begins to focus, tapping into his sand manipulating abilities. He closes his eyes, sensing the approaching enemy. He calculates he has about 5 minutes until they arrive, and right on schedule, the Black Shark Clan appears over the dunes, a massive horde, charging straight for them. Zeon puts on his new gauntlet. In the next 5 minutes, he has to figure out how to defeat an awakener ranked higher than him. His eyes glow with determination. It's time to fight. Meanwhile, high above on the Archelon's head, the two old masters watch. Pavilsa asks Daoden if this is really going to be okay. He voices his concern about leaving an E-rank kid to fight alone. Daoden's response is as cold as the desert night. If Zeon loses, he dies. That's all. Pavilsa calls him extreme, using the metaphor that even a tiger cub can be mauled by a dog while it's young. However, he adds a caveat, his gaze fixed on the battlefield below. He muses that everything changes if that cub can bear its fangs. Just as the enemy closes in, Pavilsa decides to give Zeon one last piece of advice. He yells down, telling the kid to keep one crucial thing in mind. Below, the scavengers have arrived. A subordinate asks their bandaged captain Gawain if they should pick out the useful ones to sell. Gawain scoffs at the idea, his aura flaring red as he orders his men to hack off their limbs and use them as turtle feed. With a savage roar, the clan charges forward, ready for a festival of violence. They shout their clan's name, eager to carve it into the souls of their victims. But as they thunder across the sand, the ground beneath them suddenly gives way. One of the raiders is thrown from his mount as it stumbles unexpectedly. He looks down in horror to see his camel's legs sinking into the sand as if it's turned to quicksand. Gawain pulls up short, his eyes wide with confusion. What is this trickery? In an instant, the very desert splits apart, a massive chasm opening up to swallow the charging horde whole. Panic erupts as the scavengers are dragged into the collapsing earth, screaming for a retreat that will never come. Gawain and his second-in-command, a white-haired woman named Claying, look on in stunned disbelief as the sand itself attacks them. Gawain asks if this is a trap, but Claying is certain their path was clear. As she wonders aloud if it's one of the Moat clansmen, a figure appears from the sand, hugging her tight in his arm. She has no time to react, shocked at how he appeared out of nowhere. Gawain roars in fury, ordering the mysterious attacker to take his hands off her, but it's too late. The sand pours out of every hole from her body. Gawain's eyes burn with pure, unadulterated rage. Before he can even process the attack, her body bursts into blood. He looks up to see Zeon standing over his fallen comrade. Zeon wipes a splash of blood from his own cheek, his eyes already locked on his next targets. Another scavenger, Masimoto, lunges forward, his blade glowing with a fiery red aura. But Zeon pivots, dodging the slash with fluid grace. The blade cuts through nothing but air, burying itself in the sand. Masimoto's eyes widen in shock. How did he dodge that? He realizes with a jolt that the kid didn't dodge. He blocked it with a wall of sand. Leaders warns Masimoto of the incoming attack from the below. The sand below him twists into deadly spikes that erupt from the ground. Masimoto desperately tries to parry the attack with the sword. Gawain screams his subordinate's name, enraged at the turn of events. Zeon remains calm. He raises a hand, and the sand itself rises to meet his opponent's strike, forming a perfect shield. The scavenger attack is stopped dead, and he can only stare in disbelief, questioning what is this sand. Gawain, now seething, asks what kind of petty tricks he's been pulling. He roars, his red aura exploding outwards, refusing to believe this pathetic crap is enough to stop him. Gawain warns his colleagues that Zeon seems to be manipulating something, advising a pincer attack. But he was a bit late. Zeon has already defeated the Masimoto. His hood flies back, revealing a face of pure, glowing rage. Zeon remembers the confrontation with Pavilsa, just before he confronted scavengers. Pavilsa screams at the top of his lungs, giving Zeon some last-minute intel. Zeon glances up, listening intently. Pavilsa tells him that he's probably more worried about having to kill another human than facing a D rank, but he urges the boy to remember one thing: those bastards aren't human. Pavilsa screams that they enjoy killing people, that they torture and massacre for no reason. He tells Zeon that they take pride in violating women and butchering children, and their victim count is over 200. The weight of their depravity hangs in the air. Pavilsa asks if he really thinks bastards like that can be called human. Back in the present, with his resolve hardened, Zeon's entire demeanor changes. The sand around him begins to churn with killing intent. Gawain, sensing the shift, charges forward, his own aura blazing. He screams that he's a son of a bitch, his rage reaching its peak. Zeon counters, his sand forming countless sharp projectiles that he launches at his opponent. Gawain is hit from all sides, but he pushes through. Roaring about Zeon's cheap tricks, he unleashes a powerful shockwave, thinking he's finally won. But as the dust settles, he finds the sand has absorbed all the shockwave. He rages, refusing to believe he could be stopped by such a pathetic trick. Ignoring his struggles, Zeon simply faces away, having already turned his attention to his next move. Gawain screams threats, promising to carve Zeon up piece by piece and feed him to monsters, while his family listens to his screams. But Zeon calmly turns, cutting off the monologue with a simple question: "Are those your last words?" Gawain's eyes go wide. With anger, his veins bulges. High above, Deoden cracks a wicked, proud smile. On the battlefield, Zeon clenches his sword tight. He calls the Gawain, piece of trash. Gawain retorts for being called trash. The images of his fallen comrades, Claying and Masimoto, flash through his mind. He clenches his fist, refusing to believe his strongest members were taken down by a half-baked amateur. Staring at the glowing figure of his opponent, he wonders just what kind of power this is. He gets his answer in the form of a massive sand dragon, an attack so powerful it pushes him backwards. But Gawain is far from done. His red aura explodes, and he declares he has no intention of playing along with these tricks. He roars at Zeon, demanding he stop hiding in the sand and show his true ability if he's a real awakener. Zeon stands ready, surrounded by a storm of razor-sharp sand projectiles. With a furious shout, Gawain charges forward, telling Zeon to stop hiding and face him head-on. He unleashes a devastating whirlwind of red energy, a spinning vortex of pure destruction. Slamming his fists together, he screams, asking what's next. But his confident rage turns to shock. In an instant, Zeon has completely vanished. Gawain frantically scans the area, desperately trying to locate his opponent. He finds him a second too late, as a blade shatters against his back. Zeon has reappeared right behind him. Zeon grits his teeth, stunned that Gawain predicted his attack. But Gawain just smirks. It wasn't prediction. With a triumphant cry, he grabs Zeon's arm, declaring that the boy has finally entered his effective range. Zeon realizes too late that he's the one who's been lured into a trap. Gawain is stunned, wondering how a non-martial type could close the distance so easily. He screams that Zeon doesn't understand the rules of battle. A single mistake, he roars, means death. Furious at being tricked, he vows to carve this lesson into Zeon's very being. He unleashes a massive shockwave, dedicating his revenge to Masimoto. Then another, for Clay. He screams the names of his fallen clan members, his power and rage swelling with each one. As Zeon is battered by the onslaught, Gawain tells him his ability is useless now that he's been caught. He tells Zeon to curse his own weakness and die. He throws a decisive punch, certain of his victory. But his hand is caught by two arms. The ground beneath him gives way, pulling him into a violent sand vortex. He looks up in shock to see Zeon's now bare arm, realizing the kid must have sacrificed his gauntlet to escape. Calling Zeon a rat, he's sent flying by a sand-enhanced kick. Zeon presses the attack, a blur of motion as he lands another devastating blow. Gawain coughs up blood, admitting he panicked and let his opponent go, a fatal blunder. But as he clutches his chest, he notices something. The power behind Zeon's attacks has weakened considerably. Seeing the sand projectiles lack their previous force, Gawain connects the dots. The power amplification was coming from the gauntlet. He deduces Zeon's entire strategy, using the sand to add physical force to his attacks. Convinced he's figured everything out, Gawain roars in triumph. He declares that without the gauntlet, Zeon is powerless. He scoffs at the very idea that a magic type without an amplifier could ever hope to beat a martial type in close quarters. Just as his fist is about to connect, Zeon's face turns into a sinister smile. A massive sand spike erupts from the ground, impaling the scavenger captain from behind. Gawain looks up in utter disbelief, shocked that Zeon aimed for his back. A bloody grin spreads across Zeon's face as he huffs, finally. He tells the dying man that he finally let his guard down. He can't believe Zeon used the same trick, but his mind races. Zeon shouldn't have the gauntlet, so for a magic type to generate this much force without any kind of amplification item, it's impossible. The horrifying truth finally dawns on him. He refuses to believe it. He's not fighting a simple magic user. He's fighting someone with the power to manipulate sand itself, a power that controls the very world around them. His last moments are spent being consumed by the desert, held by countless hands of sand. A final, crushing wave of sand ends his reign of terror for good. Watching from above, Pavilsa's monocle nearly falls from his eye, his face a mask of pure shock. If Zeon can manipulate sand, it means the entire world is his weapon and shield. He can't comprehend it. He knew Gawain was a combat veteran. A straight fight would have been suicide for Zeon. But the kid was smarter than that. He used his unique ability to create an opening. He patiently waited, lulling his opponent into a false sense of security. Pavilsa is in awe. To grasp a level of battle sense that takes years to cultivate, and to do it mid-fight, he admits he was completely wrong. Zeon isn't a tiger cub. He turns to a silent, stoic Daoden. He asks his old friend just where on earth he managed to find a monster like that. The brutal fight is finally over. Alone in the swirling sands, Zeon staggers, the toll of the battle clear in his every move. Clutching his wounded arm, with blood streaming from his eye, he breathes a sigh of relief. It was a close call. If he'd taken even one bad hit, he would have been a goner. A tired laugh escapes him. He wonders if his hard-as-nails master, the old geezer, would at least offer a shred of praise for pulling off such a victory. But his brief moment of respite is shattered by a tremendous tremor that shakes the very ground beneath him. The desert landscape rips apart as a massive, impossibly deep chasm splits the earth just a few feet away. Stunned, Zeon looks up, trying to comprehend the source of this cataclysmic power. On the other side of the chasm stands his master, Daoden. His voice booms with fury, asking if Zeon really thinks he can return after doing such a shoddy job. Zeon's confidence evaporates into panic. He shouts across the gap, desperately asking what he did wrong this time. Daoden's glare is utterly unforgiving, his patience clearly at its end. His mistake, the old master explains with cold fury, was the one he left alive. The swordsman, Masimoto, was not dead, but merely buried and biding his time. Daoden scolds him for his naivete. He asks if Zeon really didn't expect the swordsman he spared to plan an ambush. Zeon is left speechless, the weight of his almost fatal mistake crashing down on him. His master's lecture continues, his voice cutting through the wind. He asks how long Zeon plans to stay so complacent. With a dismissive turn, Daoden tells him to go back home. He warns his student that with such a careless mindset, he'll be dead before long anyway. From a safe distance, Pavilsa watches the harsh lesson unfold, his expression grim. Kaylee stands beside him, her face etched with worry for the young warrior. Zeon looks up, but his eyes aren't filled with despair. Instead, they burn with a newfound resolve. The desert winds whip around him as a moment of silence passes. He turns his head slightly, having processed the lesson and made a decision. With a small, knowing smile, he offers a simple word of thanks to his master. As Daoden returned to the city of Archelon, Pavilsa and Kaylee walk over to Zeon. Pavilsa expresses his deep gratitude, explaining that the people of Archelon are all non-combatants, a clan of blacksmiths with no talent for fighting. He sincerely thanks Zeon, admitting he can't even imagine how many of his people would have died without his help. Zeon listens silently, his gaze fixed on the ground as he processes their words. Suddenly, Kaylee throws her arms around him in a tight hug, excitedly telling him how cool he was for taking on the entire Black Shark squad all by himself. She tells him not to let the old monster's harsh words get to him, reassuring him that Daoden's standards have always been ridiculously high. But Zeon's gaze turns inward. His master's words had hit their mark. He knew Masimoto could have survived. He recalls seeing the swordsman still breathing beneath the sand, yet he still didn't deliver the final blow. He clenches his fist in frustration. He hadn't spared him out of mercy, but because he was simply hoping the problem would disappear on its own. The faces of the bandits he was forced to kill flashed through his mind. Even knowing they were evil, he had hesitated. He admits to himself that he didn't have the courage to face death head-on. It was a cowardly act, driven purely by his selfish desire not to carry the guilt of killing someone. Zeon understands. The old geezer is right. He's probably seen countless warriors like him die for the very same reason. Pavilsa and Kaylee exchange a knowing glance. Zeon realized Daoden's harsh scolding was his own twisted way of looking out for him, hoping he wouldn't get himself killed. A sharp, defiant grin cuts across Zeon's face as he calls out his master's name. The sudden shift in his demeanor catches Pavilsa and Kaylee completely off guard. Kaylee grabs Pavilsa in disbelief, wondering aloud if Zeon hit his head, since no one dares to talk about Daoden like that. Pavilsa muses that the weight of hesitating in a life-or-death battle must be a difficult thing for someone so young to accept. Kaylee, ever the supportive one, tries to lighten the mood by playfully stretching Zeon's cheeks. Pavilsa sighs, feeling a pang of sorrow that a kid has to suffer like this because of the foolishness of adults. He invites him inside for a meal and tells Zeon to go take a much-needed bath. Later, Daeodon sits alone in his room, reading, when a knock echoes from the door. He ignores it, but the knocking grows more insistent, more demanding. The door bursts open as Zeon storms in, angry at being ignored. Daeodon greets him by calling him an ill-mannered brat. He then coolly asks if the little coward has finally come to say he's going home. Zeon stomps forward, declaring that Daeodon is underestimating him. He shouts that he won't be broken by something like this. But his bravado falters for a moment as he stumbles over his words, his confidence wavering. Daeodon calmly points out that despite his defiant speech, Zeon's hands are still trembling. He explains that this reaction is only natural. In fact, it would be strange if he were perfectly fine after everything he's been through. Taking a life is never an easy thing, he lectures. The weight of that decision, that guilt, will follow him for the rest of his life. Taking a sip from his cup, he advises Zeon not to try and forget it, nor to become numb to the feeling. Because if he stops feeling that guilt entirely, he'll become no different from the very scum he just killed. He tells Zeon to remember this. The fact that he is suffering is proof that he is still human. Daeodon offers him one final out. If he truly can't endure it, he can still go back now. But a determined grin spreads across Zeon's face. He tells his master that he wouldn't be broken. An experience like that is no big deal for him, and he'll take care of himself. Daeodon listens, his stern expression unwavering. Zeon's tone turns cheeky. He adds that, besides, how could he leave a stubborn old man all alone? He'll stick around to make sure his master doesn't die a lonely death. A flicker of a smile crosses Daeodon's lips, betraying his tough exterior. It grows into a small, amused grin as he calls Zeon a cheeky little punk. Zeon continues to tease him, but Daeodon's fist clenches, his patience finally wearing thin. The playful banter turns into a yelp as Daeodon decides to teach his student a lesson in a more physical manner. The scene shifts to the heart of Archelon's Grand Forge, where the thunderous ring of hammers fills the air. An army of master blacksmiths works in perfect unison on a single greatsword. The colossal blade is plunged into a quenching tank, erupting in a massive cloud of steam that fills the entire workshop. Pavilsa and Kaylee watch in awe. Kaylee remarks that she's never seen so many skilled blacksmiths working together before. Pavilsa explains that it's a necessary measure. They are in the process of calming the immense power raging within Daeodon's sword. Kaylee is floored. They've been at it for several days, and she can't comprehend how so much power can flow from a single blade. The sword's name is Creon, Pavilsa says, and it is a masterpiece forged from the depths of one man's obsession. Kaylee struggles to believe a mere human could have created such a monstrous weapon. He explains that the sword is layered with countless enchantments, stacked to the absolute limit of what's possible. It also contains the cores and souls of millions of monsters, making it feel less like a weapon and more like a living, breathing creature. Kaylee asks the question on everyone's mind: who in the world could create such a sword? Was it even a human? Pavilsa reveals the creator's name was also Creon. Kaylee's eyes widen in confusion. The sword and the swordsmith share the same name? Pavilsa simply advises her to think of it as a masterpiece worthy of that name. Pavilsa cuts the conversation short, stating that Zeon and Daeodon will be leaving soon and they can discuss this later. Kaylee is snapped out of her shock, surprised to hear they're already departing. Pavilsa nods, explaining that Daeodon isn't the type to stay in one place for long and is likely already packed. In the main hall, Pavilsa approaches Daeodon and asks him what this nonsense is about. He sees Zeon half shoved in the ground. Daeodon calmly sips his drink, simply replying that it's for Zeon's education, to which Pavilsa retorts, telling him not to talk rubbish. Kaylee tries to pull Zeon, who's been planted headfirst into the floor, free. Pavilsa immediately scolds Daeodon for treating the young man so harshly. Daeodon, ever the tough master, retorts that Zeon shouldn't have sassed an old man. Sighing at their antics, Pavilsa gets down to business, informing Daeodon that the work on his legendary sword, Creon, is almost finished, meaning they'll be able to leave soon. Daeodon is genuinely surprised, exclaiming that the work was completed much faster than he expected. He heartily praises the unparalleled skill of Archelon's blacksmiths. Pavilsa simply tells him to stop by the workshop to pick it up. But as Daeodon thanks him, Pavilsa's face freezes, his eyes widening in shock and realization. Pavilsa turns and asks Daeodon to repeat what he just said about their parting. Daeodon stands his ground, reminding Pavilsa of his own words from their last meeting, that they would probably never see each other again. With his back turned, Daeodon's voice is heavy with resignation. He agrees, stating that he truly doesn't believe they will ever meet again in this lifetime. The finality in his tone hits Pavilsa hard. This is truly goodbye. A painful memory surfaces. Pavilsa recalls a dark day when everyone, himself included, chose to turn their backs on a difficult truth, choosing to live as cowards running away. He remembers the weight of that decision, how the life they were given became a burden too heavy to bear. As a witness to that day, he knows this better than anyone. But among the cowards, there was one exception. Daeodon was the only one who never looked back, the only one who walked forward into the light, alone. He alone shouldered the burden of over a century. How could Pavilsa not feel complete and utter awe for a man like that? Daeodon once again gives his old friend a heartfelt thanks for everything he has done. In a sudden shift, Daeodon breaks the heavy atmosphere with a booming laugh and a wave, cheerfully saying he'll see him next time. The words, "next time," echo in Pavilsa's mind. He looks up, a glimmer of hope and confusion in his eyes. That's when he spots him. Peeking out from behind Daeodon's is Zeon, flashing a triumphant, mischievous grin. Pavilsa finally understands. Zeon's promise to stick around and make sure the old geezer doesn't die alone wasn't just empty talk. With a renewed spirit, Pavilsa calls out to the departing pair, joyfully telling them he'll look forward to seeing them again. 2 weeks later, Pavilsa sits alone, on a rock in the vast desert. He muses to himself that the past 2 weeks have flown by in the blink of an eye. His quiet contemplation is interrupted by a playful sneak attack from Kaylee, who pops up behind him with a little roar. He chides her for acting like a child, but she just pouts, insisting that she's still young. Pavilsa notices her mood, observing that she's acting particularly childish today. He gently asks if something is bothering her. Kaylee looks off into the distance, admitting that she just feels a little empty inside now that Zeon is gone. She explains that after being so worried about him, she can't stop replaying the memory of his pure, unadulterated joy when they gave him his new gear. A flashback shows Zeon's wide-eyed amazement as he learned his new breastplate was made from the wolf ant queen that nearly killed him. He was completely floored by the sheer amount of enchanted items they gifted him, his face a picture of disbelief. His excitement peaked when he discovered the subspace storage, marveling at its capacity and cheekily asking Daeodon if he wanted to get inside. Seeing him laugh with such pure, childish delight reminded Kaylee that despite his immense power, Zeon was still just a kid at heart. She smiles wistfully, hoping he can keep that bright smile of his. She then laughs, realizing she sounds just like her grandfather. Pavilsa teases that she's about 50 years too early for that, but his expression turns serious as he makes a request of his granddaughter. He asks Kaylee that if their paths ever cross with Zeon's again, she must promise to help him. Kaylee beams, enthusiastically agreeing. She declares that Zeon saved Archelon, making him an honorary member of their clan. She vows to create her greatest masterpiece for him. Pavilsa looks down, his expression resolute and filled with a deep sense of duty. He firmly believes they will meet Zeon again. By helping the young man who inherited Daeodon's will, they can begin to repay their immense debt. A debt, he reveals, that is owed to Daeodon not just by them, but by all of humanity. Meanwhile, Zeon's training in the desert continues, punctuated by a swift fist to the head from his master. Reeling from the blow, Zeon yelps in pain, demanding to know why the old man hit him. He complains that his IQ is already low enough without Daeodon trying to lower it further. The master's excuse? Zeon was making too much noise while he was trying to sleep. Zeon protests, pointing out that Daeodon was the one who ordered him to kill any magic beasts he saw at night. He gets so worked up he claims even Daeodon's greatsword Crayon is clicking its tongue in disapproval at his master's ridiculousness. Daeodon's solution to Zeon's low IQ is simple. Hit him on the other side of the head to balance it out. Now half buried in the sand with 2 steaming lumps on his head, a defeated Zeon mutters, "That's not how it works." He turns to his friend, the sword Creon, and complains that it didn't take his side in the argument. Daeodon tells him to cut the crap, but Zeon looks surprisingly pleased. Through all the chaos, he succeeded in his goal, completely exhausting his mana for the day. He's taking his master's training to heart. Mana is like a muscle. You have to push it to its absolute limit to make it grow. He's determined to maximize his capacity and improve his skills. The driving force behind this intense new resolve is the memory of his fight against the scavenger. It was his first real battle against another awakened human, not a monster. And he's honest with himself. He lost. He hesitated when facing a person, a weakness he can't afford. After Daeodon left him in the desert, the overwhelming emotion that consumed him wasn't despair, but pure, unadulterated anger at his own weakness and complacency. He realized that a single moment of carelessness could invalidate his entire struggle for survival. Even the low-level monsters he fought had more will to live than he showed in that moment. Looking up at the desert sky, he felt a cold sting of disappointment. It was an awful feeling he vowed to never experience again. He has to get stronger, no matter what it takes. He knows his limits, but he also sees his potential. So for now, he'll focus on his training and mastering the new gauntlet that Kaylee gifted him. He remembers her instructions. Inserting a fire attribute item will enhance its power. He regrets not grabbing a core from the Drake dungeon and wonders if being able to communicate with his weapon is the secret to his master's strength. As he continues his training, he mutters to himself, questioning if the old man's crankiness is a sign of male menopause. Suddenly, Daeodon's voice cuts in, asking if he's finished harvesting. Zeon, cleaning a magic crystal, confirms that he is. Daeodon stands, observing the setting sun. It's time to move on. He casually asks if the sun is setting faster than usual, or if it's just an illusion caused by their constant activity. Daeodon explains that the change in the sun's movement means they've crossed over into a new, unfamiliar region of the vast desert. With no landmarks, they must rely on the sun to navigate. Zeon cheekily interprets this as his master finally letting him find a place to sleep. Daeodon denies it, but his attention is quickly drawn to something on the horizon. It seems they've got a welcoming party. From their vantage point on a dune, they spot a massive, dark shape looming in the distance. Zeon squints, trying to make it out. He wonders if it's a mine, or just a strange rock formation, noting it seems too small for a mine. A wide, manic grin spreads across Daeodon's face. He tells the boy that this is just the tip of the iceberg, and what lies beneath the sand is truly surprising. With a roar, he declares that an unimaginably massive mountain is buried beneath them, a rock so colossal that even the monstrous sandworms dare not approach it. Zeon is just left bewildered by his master's sudden explosion of excitement. Shouting, "Just like you!" Daeodon takes a running leap, soaring through the air towards the towering rock. Zeon watches him go with a weary sigh, chalking it up to his master's excitement about reaching a new region. He mutters under his breath that taking care of the elderly is a tough job. Zeon follows his master, sand surfing, easily scaling the sheer rock face. He arrives at the top to find Daeodon already lounging comfortably, who casually asks what took him so long. Zeon gives him a deadpan look and asks if they've somehow swapped mental ages. He then pulls out 2 pieces of dried meat. The master and apprentice sit down, kick up their feet, and tosses the jerky in their mouth in unison. A rare moment of peace in the harsh desert. Daijin finally breaks the silence, asking Zeon how he's faring in the desert. Zeon replies that he's managing well, thanks to his master's teachings, but admits he still has a long way to go. Daeodon grunts that at least the boy knows his place. With a smirk, Zeon adds that it's hard to feel strong when traveling with a monster like him. Daeodon just dismisses it as useless flattery. The lighthearted mood fades, as Zeon's expression turns serious. He has an important question for his master. He asks how far he is from mastering the sand ability Daeodon said he would need. His master looks to the swirling, star-filled night sky and gives him a benchmark. When he can split a sandstorm that covers the heavens, he'll be ready. Zeon looks down, the sheer scale of the task weighing on him for a moment. Daeodon offers him a new path. He tells Zeon that if he continues on their current route, he will eventually find a dungeon that Daeodon himself discovered decades ago for personal reasons. He warns that it is an extremely dangerous place, but, he adds, conquering it might be the key to rapidly improving Zeon's skills. He poses the question, will he go? Zeon's face splits into a wide, almost feral grin, his eyes gleaming with excitement. He jumps to his feet, vibrating with energy, shouting to go right now. What are they waiting for? Daeodon coolly tells him to just go to sleep. At that moment, panicked screams echo from below as a group frantically scramble up the rock face. They hear rustling in the darkness below. Zeon instinctively asks if it's a magic beast. He senses one nearby and offers to take it out, but Daeodon sarcastically asks if he'd rather try to make friends with it. The group are in a panic, trying to find a place to hide from whatever is chasing them, quickly deciding that splitting up would be even more dangerous. Zeon and Daeodon watch from above as the desperate group runs towards their location, assuming they're being pursued by a monster. But as they draw closer, Zeon's eyes widen in surprise. It's a group of elves?